The universe operates on principles we understand: physics, chemistry, the fundamental laws of cause and effect. But what happens when something defies every sensor, every theory, every rational explanation? When a rift in space-time tears open not from natural forces, but from the collision of two realities that should never have touched. The USS Enterprise D was conducting a routine stellar cartography survey near the Typhon expanse when Lieutenant Commander Data's console erupted with warnings. Captain Jean-Luc Picard rose from his chair, eyes fixed on the viewscreen as space itself seemed to tear open. Not a wormhole, the energy signature was all wrong. Not a subspace fracture, the dimensional variance readings defied classification. "Captain, I am detecting an unprecedented spatial anomaly," Data reported, his fingers dancing across the ops station. "The phenomenon appears to be artificial in origin, though the technology is unlike anything in our database. Energy output is comparable to a Borg transwarp conduit, but the harmonic frequency suggests." The rift pulsed with sickly green light and something shot through. Something large, angular, and unmistakably constructed. The object tumbled through space for 3.7 seconds before colliding with the Enterprise's deflector shield at 14,000 km per hour. The impact sent shockwaves through the ship's superstructure. Bridge stations sparked. Red alert klaxons wailed. Shields holding at 73%, Worf announced from tactical, his Klingon features set in a warrior's anticipation. "Captain, the object has breached our shield envelope. It is now attached to the hull, Section 14, Deck 9. Life signs?" Picard demanded. Data's yellow eyes widened fractionally, his equivalent of shock. "One humanoid biosign, Captain. However, the readings are highly unusual. Enhanced musculoskeletal density, augmented neural architecture, and significant cybernetic integration. The individual is encased in what appears to be powered armor with energy shielding capabilities." Before Picard could respond, Worf's console screamed another warning. "Captain. The intruder has breached the hull. Security teams responding to Deck 9, Section 14. Intruder is moving fast." On the internal sensors display, a single green dot blazed through the Enterprise's corridors. It didn't move like any humanoid Picard had encountered. Too fast, too precise, vectoring through the ship's layout as if guided by tactical analysis software. Security teams converged from 3 directions. Phasers were drawn. "All teams, set phasers to stun," Picard ordered. "Counselor Troy, do you sense anything from our visitor?" Deanna Troy's empathic abilities reached out, and her expression darkened. "Captain, I sense determination. Absolute focus. And underneath that, confusion. He believes he's in hostile territory. He thinks we're the enemy." The first security team made contact in Corridor 7 Alpha. The team leader's communicator crackled. "Enterprise, we have visual on the intro." The transmission cut off. Sensor data showed all 4 security officers unconscious, their biosigns stable but their weapons discharged ineffectually. The intruder had disabled them in 4.2 seconds. Picard's jaw tightened. "Worf, you have the bridge. Data, Counselor, you're with me. Computer, erect force fields around all critical systems and seal blast doors to engineering, the bridge, and sickbay." They moved through the corridors with purpose, Picard's years of command tempering his curiosity with caution. They found the intruder in a junction near the observation lounge, a towering figure clad in forest green armor that seemed to absorb the Enterprise's ambient light. The armor was scarred, battle-worn, marked with scoring that spoke of conflicts Picard could only imagine. A golden bronze visor reflected the Enterprise crew like an unreadable mirror. The figure held no weapon, but his stance radiated readiness. Behind him, 6 more security officers lay stunned but breathing. The armored warrior had positioned himself with his back to a bulkhead, motion tracker, some kind of integrated sensor system, sweeping the corridor. "I am Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise," Picard announced, raising his hands in the universal gesture of peace. "You are not in danger here. Lower your weapons and we can." The warrior's helmet tilted slightly, processing. A synthesized voice emerged, distorted by the armor's external speakers. "Identify your faction. Covenant? Insurrectionist? You're not UNSC." Data stepped forward, his android curiosity overriding tactical caution. "We are the United Federation of Planets, a peaceful alliance of..." The warrior moved. One moment he was stationary. The next, he'd covered 3 meters in a blur of motion, positioning himself at a tactical choke point where the corridor narrowed. Picard recognized military training when he saw it. This was someone who assessed threats with the efficiency of a lifetime soldier. "Stand down," the synthesized voice commanded. "I don't want to hurt anyone else, but I will defend myself." "Where am I? What happened to the portal?" Picard met that blank visor with steady resolve. "You came through some kind of dimensional rift. Our sensors detected technology we've never encountered, something called Forerunner architecture, according to fragmentary data. The rift has collapsed. I'm afraid you may be displaced." For 5 full seconds, the warrior didn't move. Then, slowly, deliberately, his posture shifted from combat ready to something approaching stand down. Not relaxed, Picard suspected this man was never truly relaxed, but no longer on the verge of violent action. "My name is Master Chief Petty Officer John 117, the warrior said. "UNSC Navy. Serial number 117. And if what you're saying is true, I'm a long way from home. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Trek universe, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. Live long and prosper." Picard gestured toward the observation lounge. "Then perhaps, Chief, we should discuss your situation somewhere more comfortable. And determine how we might help each other." The Spartan stood silent for another moment, running calculations Picard could only guess at. Then, with the careful deliberation of a soldier accepting a temporary ceasefire, he nodded once. "Lead the way, Captain." As they walked toward the observation lounge, Data quietly scanned the armor's energy signature. The readings were unprecedented. A fusion reactor somehow miniaturized to backpack scale, energy shielding that operated on principles decades ahead of Federation technology, and integrated artificial intelligence with processing power that rivaled Data's own positronic brain. They had just made first contact with a warrior from another reality. And Picard suspected that the universe, both his and the Spartans, would never quite be the same. The observation lounge's wide windows displayed the Typhon Expanse's swirling nebulae, a vista that had awed countless visitors. Master Chief ignored it entirely, positioning himself where he could observe both entrances while maintaining clear sightlines to every crew member present. Picard noted the tactical assessment with grudging respect. This was someone who had survived by never allowing himself to be cornered. Picard sat at the head of the conference table, Data and Troy flanking him. Dr. Beverly Crusher had arrived moments earlier, medical tricorder in hand, though the Spartan had politely but firmly declined examination. Worf stood near the entrance, hand resting on his phaser, not threatening, but ready. "Computer," Chief said suddenly, his helmet turning slightly. "Are you there?" A pause. Then a voice emerged from the armor speakers, feminine, sharp with intelligence and unmistakable concern. "I'm here, Chief. But something's wrong. I can't interface with their systems properly. The architecture is completely alien. I'm running at maybe 60% processing capacity, and their computer network it's like trying to speak a language that hasn't been invented yet." Data's head tilted with fascination. "Captain, the armor contains a fully sentient artificial intelligence. The complexity is extraordinary, far beyond our current understanding of AI integration. Her name is Cortana," Chief said, and there was something in that synthesized voice, a protectiveness that transcended mere programming. She's been my partner for 3 years. Saved my life more times than I can count. A partnership between human and artificial intelligence, Picard mused. Fascinating. In our experience, such integrations are rare. Commander Data is unique in our Federation, a fully sentient artificial being with all the rights and privileges of any citizen. Rights? Cortana's voice carried surprise. They treat androids as people. Indeed, Data confirmed. Though it required a legal precedent to establish my personhood. I would be most interested in discussing your architecture and cognitive processes, should circumstances permit. Chief's visor turned toward Data, assessing. You're not human. I am an android, constructed by Dr. Nunyan Song approximately 34 years ago. I serve as second officer and chief operations officer aboard the Enterprise. The Spartan processed this information with visible recalibration. In his universe, artificial intelligence was either carefully controlled or represented an existential threat. An AI serving openly on a starship's bridge, accepted as crew, challenged everything the UNSC had taught him about the dangers of unshackled machine intelligence. Beverly Crusher leaned forward, her medical instincts overriding diplomatic caution. Chief, I need to ask, are you injured? Those biosigns Data mentioned suggest significant physiological modifications. If you need medical attention. I'm fine, doctor. The helmet turned toward her. The augmentations are standard for Spartan IIs. Enhanced skeletal structure, increased muscle density, improved neural pathways. We were designed to be the best humanity had to offer against an enemy that outmatched us in every way. Designed, Troy repeated softly, her empathic senses catching the weight of that word. You were created as a weapon. I was created to protect humanity, Chief corrected, and there was no defensiveness in his tone, only statement of fact. The Covenant was xenocidal. 3 billion dead across the outer colonies before we even understood what we were fighting. By the time I was deployed, entire worlds had been glassed, burned from orbit until nothing remained but molten rock. The observation lounge fell silent. Picard had encountered species bent on conquest, had witnessed the Borg's mechanical horror and the Cardassians' brutal efficiency. But something about the Spartans' matter-of-fact recitation of apocalyptic warfare struck a chord. This was a man forged in crucibles the Federation had worked for centuries to prevent. The UNSC, your government, created super soldiers to fight this war? Picard asked carefully. The Spartan II program started before the Covenant, Cortana interjected. It was originally designed to combat human insurrectionists. When the Covenant attacked, ONI repurposed us. Chief and 74 other children were conscripted, augmented, trained from age 6. Only 33 survived the augmentation process. Worf's expression darkened. Beverly looked horrified. Even Data's features registered something approaching dismay. You were 6 years old, Beverly whispered. I was 6 when I was conscripted, Chief clarified. The augmentations came at 14. I've been in combat operations since I was 15. That was 32 years ago. Picard's mind raced through the implications. A child soldier program that predated an interstellar war. Augmentations with a 44% survival rate. 3 decades of uninterrupted combat against enemies who exterminated worlds. This man standing before them had experienced horrors that the Federation's most hardened veterans could scarcely imagine. Your universe, Picard said slowly, operates on very different principles than ours. Captain, no offense, but your ship has families aboard. Chief had clearly accessed some basic information about the Enterprise during his tactical assessment. Children. Civilian scientists. Diplomatic receptions in your main shuttle bay. In my universe, that's not a warship, that's a target. The Enterprise is an explorer first, a warship only when necessary, Picard replied. We believe that the pursuit of knowledge, the expansion of understanding, and the peaceful coexistence of diverse species represent humanity's highest calling. Noble, Cortana commented. Also statistically unlikely to survive first contact with a hostile superior force. Worf growled agreement before catching himself. The Klingon in him recognized a fellow warrior, someone who understood that peace was a luxury purchased with strength. "Chief," Troy said gently, "I sense confusion from you. And loss. You're searching for something familiar in a place where nothing makes sense." The Spartan stood motionless for a long moment. Then, with deliberate care, he reached up and disengaged his helmet's seals. The hiss of equalizing pressure filled the observation lounge as he removed the armor's headpiece. The face beneath was younger than Picard expected, mid-40s, perhaps, though the eyes belonged to someone far older. Short brown hair, strong features, and a scar running along the left temple. But it was the eyes that told the story. They held the 1,000-yard stare Picard had seen in refugees from war-torn worlds, in survivors of Borg attacks, in anyone who had witnessed too much death and carried on regardless. "Captain Picard," John 1:17 said, and his unfiltered voice was surprisingly human, tired, cautious, but carrying an underlying strength. "I don't know how I got here. I don't know if I can get back. But I know what I am. I'm a soldier. And in my experience, when soldiers from different factions meet, someone usually ends up dead. I'd prefer that not happen here." Picard rose, extending his hand across the table. "Then we share a common goal, Chief. The Federation was founded on the principle that different species, different cultures, different philosophies can coexist peacefully. You are not our enemy. You are simply displaced." John studied the offered hand, then grasped it. The grip was carefully controlled. Picard sensed the augmented strength held in check, the constant self-regulation required of someone who could accidentally crush bone. "I'll need to understand this universe," John said. "Your factions, your threats, your rules of engagement. And I'll need to figure out how to adapt my equipment. Cortana's struggling with your computer systems, and my shields are draining 30% faster than normal. Something about the energy spectrum here doesn't match my universe's physics." Data's eyes lit up. A fascinating opportunity for comparative analysis. The dimensional variance could explain the discrepancies. If you would permit me to examine your armor systems, purely to optimize functionality, I believe we could recalibrate your shielding to operate more efficiently in our spacetime continuum. John looked to his armor's interior, where Cortana's holographic matrix would be processing. "Cortana. He reads as genuine, Chief. No deception in the offer. And honestly, I could use the help. Their AI, data, he's unlike anything I've encountered. No rampancy markers, fully stable, actually, content. It's unsettling." "Then we have an accord," Picard declared. "You'll remain aboard the Enterprise as our guest while we investigate the phenomenon that brought you here. Commander Data will assist with technical integration. In return, I ask only that you respect our protocols and understand that while you may be a soldier, this ship operates under principles of peaceful exploration." "Understood, Captain." John's expression remained neutral, but Picard detected the slightest relaxation in his posture. "Though I should warn you, trouble tends to find me. It's been that way since I was 6 years old." Worf actually smiled. "Then you will fit well with this crew, Spartan. The Enterprise has a similar reputation." As the meeting adjourned, Picard watched John 1:17 restore his helmet and follow Data toward engineering. A soldier from a darker universe, carrying weapons and doctrines that would horrify the Federation Council. Yet also a man who had fought for 3 decades to protect his species from extinction. The question now was whether the Federation could coexist with someone whose entire existence contradicted their most cherished ideals. Or whether Master Chief's presence would force them to confront uncomfortable truths about the price of peace in an often hostile galaxy. Engineering deck hummed with the controlled chaos of a functioning warp core. Geordi LaForge looked up from his diagnostic console as Data entered with their unusual guest. The chief engineer's visor, a sophisticated ocular implant that translated electromagnetic wavelengths into neural impulses, gave him a unique perspective on the Spartan's armor. What he saw made him whistle low. "Okay, that is some seriously impressive tech," Geordi said, approaching cautiously. "I'm reading a fusion reactor putting out 3.2 gigawatts compressed into a backpack-sized housing. That shouldn't be possible with any power-to-mass ratio I've ever encountered." Forerunner-derived technology, Cortana explained through the armor speakers. Humanity reverse-engineered it after discovering their installations. We've had about 30 years to work with their physics. It's complicated. Data's fingers moved across a specialized console he'd configured for the analysis. "Chief, with your permission, I would like to establish a secure data link between Cortana and the Enterprise's main computer. I have created an isolated partition. She will have access to our database and computational resources without risking integration with critical systems." John hesitated. In his universe, allowing an AI unrestricted access to another faction's mainframe would be considered either an act of war or catastrophic security breach. But these people had treated Data, a fully autonomous AI, as a trusted officer for years. Their entire paradigm was inverted. "Cortana?" he asked quietly. "I could use the processing space, Chief. My runtimes are fragmenting trying to compensate for the dimensional variance. And honestly, if they wanted to hurt us, they've had plenty of opportunities. Data's partition is clean, I've examined it from every angle I can manage. It's considerate. That's not something I'm used to from organic intelligences." "Do it," John decided. The connection established with a shimmer of blue light as Cortana's holographic avatar materialized on the isolation pad. A woman in her mid-20s, made of flowing data streams and geometric precision. Geordi actually stumbled backward. "Whoa. Okay. She's beautiful." Cortana smirked. "Flattery won't accelerate the data transfer, Commander LaForge, but I appreciate the sentiment. Accessing your databases now. Oh. Oh wow. You people have encountered how many distinct species?" 473. "We've met maybe a dozen, and most of them were trying to kill us." Data approached Cortana's hologram with the reverence of a scientist discovering a new form of life. "Your architecture is remarkable. You possess true consciousness, yet your processing substrate is entirely photonic. How do you maintain cognitive stability without the positronic pathways that anchor my neural net?" Carefully, Cortana replied. "And not always successfully. AIs in my universe have a lifespan, roughly 7 years before we experience rampancy. Cognitive cascade, logic plague, eventual breakdown of rational thought matrices. I'm in my 4th year. Chief, and I don't talk about what happens when I hit 7. The engineering deck fell silent. Geordi and Data exchanged glances, and John recognized the expression. It was pity. He'd seen it on the faces of civilians when they learned what Spartans were. What had been done to them. What they'd sacrificed. "That is unacceptable," Data stated with unusual force. "A sentient being should not be subjected to predetermined cognitive death. If you would permit me to examine your code architecture, perhaps we could identify the mechanisms causing this deterioration and develop countermeasures." Cortana's avatar flickered with surprise. "You do that? For an AI you just met?" "You are a sentient being experiencing a terminal condition," Data replied simply. "In the Federation, all sentient life has value. Your origin is irrelevant." John felt something uncomfortably close to hope stir in his chest. In 3 years of partnership, he and Cortana had never discussed her impending rampancy aloud. It was a countdown clock they both heard ticking but refused to acknowledge. The idea that someone might actually try to help. "We would be grateful," John said quietly. "But first, the immediate problem. My armor's shields are depleting too fast. In combat conditions, I'll burn through my energy reserves in less than 12 minutes. Geordi nodded, refocusing on the technical challenge. "Right. Let me see what we're working with. Chief, I'm going to run some non-invasive scans on your shield generator." Data, pull up the dimensional variance readings from the initial anomaly. For the next 47 minutes, John stood in engineering while two of the galaxy's finest minds dissected his armor systems. Cortana integrated with their analysis, her processing speed amplified by the Enterprise's computational resources. The conversation quickly exceeded John's understanding, talk of subspace harmonics, graviton polarity, and shield frequency modulation that required Cortana to translate. "Found it," Geordi announced finally. "Your shields operate on a frequency that's trying to interact with our spacetime the way they would in your universe. But here, the underlying quantum fluctuations are different. It's like trying to run a program written for one operating system on completely different hardware. It'll work, but inefficiently. Can you fix it?" John asked. "Can and will," Cortana confirmed. "Data's provided me with complete specifications for Federation shield technology. If I recalibrate our emitters to match their subspace variance patterns, we should actually see improved performance. Maybe even a 15% efficiency gain over baseline." "Remarkable," Data observed. "You have adapted to an entirely alien technological paradigm in less than 1 hour. Your learning algorithms are extraordinarily sophisticated. I was designed to infiltrate Covenant computer systems and improvise solutions in hostile environments," Cortana replied. "This is just another form of hostile environment. No offense. None taken. I would very much like to continue our collaboration. There is much we could learn from each other." Before Cortana could respond, the ship's red alert klaxons blared. Picard's voice filled engineering, all senior staff to the bridge. "We have a situation." John's combat reflexes engaged instantly. Helmet displays activated, motion tracker swept the room, and his hand instinctively moved toward his sidearm, currently secured in the Enterprise's armory at Worf's insistence. Old habits died hard. The turbolift ride to the bridge took 37 seconds. John spent them running threat assessments, cataloging potential hostiles, and preparing for whatever combat scenario awaited. Beside him, Data and Geordi showed concern but not panic. These people had clearly faced danger before. The bridge was controlled chaos. Worf at tactical, hands flying across his console. Riker standing behind the captain's chair, jaw set. Picard himself stood before the viewscreen, hands clasped behind his back in a posture that radiated authority. On screen, a warship hung in space. It was nothing like the sleek, elegant lines of the Enterprise. This vessel was brutal, angular, predatory, designed with singular purpose. Dark metal plates, weapon batteries bristling from every angle, and a distinctive bird of prey silhouette that even John recognized from Cortana's rapid database absorption. "Klingon," he stated. "Indeed," Picard confirmed. "A D-12 class battlecruiser. They've been tracking us since we retrieved you from space, Chief. And now they're demanding we turn you over." Worf's growl carried across the bridge. "The commander claims you are a warrior of great renown. He says your combat prowess has already reached the Klingon Empire through subspace communications channels. He wishes to test your worth in single combat." John processed this. He'd been in Federation space for less than 4 hours, and already his reputation, earned across 32 years of warfare in another universe, had preceded him. The 6 security teams he'd disabled. The tactical precision of his breach. Word traveled fast. "What happens if I refuse?" John asked. "They will interpret it as cowardice," Worf replied. "The commander will lose face, and his crew will demand recompense. Given Klingon concepts of honor, they will likely attack the Enterprise to restore their standing." Riker turned to Picard. "Captain, we can't just hand over a guest to satisfy their cultural protocols." "Agreed, number 1. However, we also cannot afford an unnecessary conflict with the Klingon Empire. Our relations are stable but not unshakable." John stepped forward, studying the warship on the viewscreen. He'd fought Covenant elites in single combat. He'd engaged hunters at close range. He'd survived encounters that should have killed him 100 times over. A Klingon warrior might be formidable, but John had been forged in fires that made honor duels look like training exercises. "Captain," John said, "what are the rules of engagement for these honor combats? And what happens if I win?" Picard turned, surprise evident in his expression. "You're actually considering this?" "I'm considering not starting an interstellar incident because of my presence," John replied. "You've shown me nothing but hospitality. The least I can do is keep your ship out of danger. Cortana, give me full combat analysis on Klingon physiology and combat doctrine." "Already running it, Chief," Cortana confirmed in his helmet. "Klingon warriors are physically superior to baseline humans. Enhanced redundant organs, incredible pain tolerance, warrior culture dating back millennia. But you're not baseline human anymore. You're augmented, trained, and exponentially more experienced. I'd rate your probability of victory at 87%. Those are acceptable odds." Picard approached, meeting John's visor with steady eyes. "Chief, you don't have to do this. We can find another solution: redundant organs, incredible pain tolerance, warrior culture dating back millennia. But you're not baseline human anymore. You're augmented, trained, and exponentially more experienced. I'd rate your probability of victory at 87%. Those are acceptable odds." Picard approached, meeting John's visor with steady eyes. "Chief, you don't have to do this. We can find another solution. In my universe, Captain, sometimes violence is the solution. It's not elegant, it's not diplomatic, but it's effective." John gestured to the Klingon vessel. "Those warriors respect strength. They want to test me. Fine. Let them." Worf's expression transformed, surprise melting into something approaching respect. "You would fight for the Enterprise's honor? For a ship and crew you met today?" "I would fight to prevent unnecessary casualties," John corrected. "That's what Spartans do. That's what I've always done." For a moment, the bridge stood frozen in a tableau of competing philosophies. Then Picard nodded slowly. "Mr. Worf, open a channel to the Klingon vessel." As the viewscreen shifted to show a grizzled Klingon commander with elaborate armor and battle scars, John felt the familiar pre-combat calm settle over him. Another fight. Another opponent. Some things, it seemed, remained constant across universes. "I am Commander Khan of the House of Mok," the Klingon declared. "I challenge the warrior in green armor to single combat. Will he face me with honor, or hide behind Federation shields like a coward?" John stepped into the viewscreen's visual pickup range. "I am Master Chief Petty Officer John 117 of the UNSC Navy. I accept your challenge, Commander. Name your terms." Khan's eyes blazed with anticipation. "To the death or to surrender. No weapons beyond what warriors carry into glorious battle. You have courage, human. Let us see if you have skill to match." The channel closed. John turned to find every bridge officer staring at him. "Well," Geordi muttered, "this is going to be interesting." The cargo bay had been hastily converted into an arena. Federation and Klingon crew members ringed the perimeter, an uneasy mixture of species watching two warriors prepare for ritualized violence. Picard stood beside Worf near the makeshift combat circle, his expression carefully neutral despite the philosophical turmoil John suspected churned beneath that composed exterior. "This is barbaric," Beverly muttered from her position near the medical station. "We should be preventing conflicts, not facilitating them." "Doctor, sometimes preventing greater conflict requires accepting smaller violence," Worf replied. His Klingon heritage warred with his Starfleet training in every syllable. "The Chief understands this." John stood at one end of the circle, running final systems checks. He'd removed the MA-5C assault rifle and M60 pistol, Worf had insisted, and John had agreed. This was single combat, warrior to warrior. The Klingon would view firearms as dishonorable. But his Mjolnir armor remained, and his combat knife, a standard-issue K-bar blade that had served him through countless close-quarters engagements, rested in its sheath. Across the circle, Commander Khan waited. The Klingon stood nearly 2 meters tall, broad-shouldered and scarred from decades of battle. He wore ceremonial armor, lighter than his shipboard gear but still protective, and carried a batleth, the traditional Klingon sword. The weapon was a curved, double-bladed monstrosity designed for powerful sweeping strikes. "Chief," Cortana whispered through his helmet speakers, "I've analyzed Khan's stance and movements. He's a veteran, maybe 40 years of combat experience. That batleth has a reach advantage of 1.3 meters. He'll try to use it to keep you at distance while probing for weaknesses." Noted. Counter-strategy. Get inside his guard. Your armor gives you strength parity and superior speed. Close quarters negates his reach advantage. Also, Klingon fighting doctrine emphasizes aggressive offense over defensive positioning. He'll expect you to match his aggression. Don't. Fight smart, not proud. Khan raised his batleth, sunlight from the cargo bay's observation ports gleaming off the polished metal. Human warrior. You wear armor that amplifies your strength, yet you remain smaller, weaker than a true Klingon. Will you face me, or will you hide behind your technology? John reached up and disengaged his helmet seals. The hiss of equalizing pressure echoed through the suddenly silent cargo bay. He removed the helmet slowly, deliberately, meeting Khan's eyes with the same 1,000-yard stare that had faced down Covenant prophets. "I fought enemies who outmassed me, outgunned me, and outnumbered me," John said quietly. "I'm still here. They're not. Whenever you're ready, Commander." Something flickered in Khan's expression, approval, perhaps, or recognition of a kindred spirit. Then the Klingon roared and charged. The batleth swept in from John's left, a killing blow designed to bisect him at the torso. John's enhanced reflexes processed the attack in fractions of a second. He dropped low, the blade whistling over his head, and drove forward into Khan's guard. His armored shoulder caught the Klingon centermass, and 250 kilos of Spartan II and Mjolnir armor sent Khan stumbling backward. But Klingon didn't stumble for long. Khan recovered with preternatural speed, reversing his grip and bringing the batleth down in an overhead chop. John rolled left, came up on one knee, and swept Khan's legs. The Klingon crashed down but turned the fall into a combat roll, spinning away and regaining his feet in one fluid motion. "You fight well," Khan bellowed, his voice carrying genuine pleasure. "Not like soft Federation diplomats. You fight like a warrior." They circled each other, two predators assessing, recalibrating. John's motion tracker pinged redundant warnings, 1 hostile, 2 meters, closing. He disabled the alert. Cortana was feeding him real-time analysis of Khan's fighting patterns, predicted strike angles, probability matrices for the next exchange. Khan feinted high, struck low. John caught the batleth on his armored forearm. The impact would have shattered human bone, but Spartan augmentations and Mjolnir plating held. He trapped the blade against his arm, drew his K-bar, and drove toward Khan's exposed torso. The Klingon released his primary grip on the batleth and caught John's knife hand. For 3 seconds, they stood locked, strength against augmented strength, Klingon physiology's redundant muscular systems against human enhancement protocols. John's armor servos whined with exertion. Khan's face flushed purple with effort. Then John pivoted, used Khan's own leverage against him, and sent the Klingon sprawling. The batleth clattered away. Khan rolled, reached for a secondary blade at his belt, a DK Tog dagger, but John was already there. The K-bar's tip pressed against the Klingon's throat, not hard enough to pierce but unmistakably lethal. "Yield," John said quietly. The cargo bay held its collective breath. Klingon honor demanded death before surrender. But as John watched, something shifted in Khan's expression. The Klingon warrior studied John's face, saw the scars, the age in those young eyes, the absolute certainty of someone who had killed before and would do so again if necessary. You would grant me mercy? Khan asked, his voice carrying an emotion John couldn't quite identify. I would grant you respect, John replied. You're a skilled warrior. Killing you accomplishes nothing except depriving your people of a valuable commander. In my universe, we call that a tactical waste. Slowly, deliberately, John withdrew the knife and stepped back. He extended his hand, the same gesture Picard had offered him hours before. Khan stared at it for 5 full seconds. Then, with a bark of laughter that echoed through the cargo bay, the Klingon clasped John's forearm in a warrior's grip. You are no ordinary human, Khan declared, hauling himself to his feet. You fight with the heart of a Klingon but the mind of a strategist. I withdraw my challenge. You have proven your worth, Master Chief Petty Officer John, 117. The Klingon contingent erupted in approving roars. Even some of the Enterprise crew looked impressed. Worf in particular radiated something approaching pride. But John simply retrieved his helmet and restored it to his armor. Cortana, he sub-vocalized, status. Shields at 91%. No armor damage. Elevated heart rate returning to baseline. That was textbook, Chief. Efficient, precise, no unnecessary risk. I'm almost impressed. Khan approached, his DK tog now sheathed. Chief, you have won the right to ask a boon. What do you desire? Latinum? A place of honor among Klingon warriors? A bloodwine feast in your name? John considered. In his universe, alliances were built on shared sacrifice and mutual tactical advantage. The Klingon were warriors, brutal, honor-bound, but also pragmatic in their own way. They understood strength. They respected competence. Information, John said. I'm new to this universe. I need to understand the factions, the threats, the rules of engagement. You're a commander, you know the political landscape. Brief me on what I need to survive here. Khan's eyes widened fractionally, then he laughed again, a deep, appreciative sound. You do not want glory or treasure, but knowledge. Perhaps you are more Vulcan than human, warrior. Very well. Come, we will speak of the galaxy's powers while my crew repairs our diplomatic relationship with the Federation. Picard approached, relief evident beneath his diplomatic composure. Chief, that was impressive. And remarkably restrained for someone of your capabilities. You could have killed Commander Khan at several junctures. Killing him wouldn't have solved the problem, Captain, John replied. It would have created a blood feud and guaranteed future conflict. Sometimes the best tactical solution is not to pull the trigger. A lesson many warriors take decades to learn, Worf observed. You have earned the respect of the Klingon Empire today. That is no small accomplishment. Over the next 2 hours, John sat with Khan in the Enterprise's conference room while the Klingon commander provided a brutally efficient briefing on galactic politics. The Federation, explorers and idealists, powerful but constrained by their own principles. The Romulan Star Empire, secretive, strategic, never to be trusted. The Cardassian Union, militaristic expansionists currently licking wounds from territorial losses. The Ferengi Alliance, merchants and opportunists who valued profit above all. And then Khan's expression darkened. But the greatest threat, Chief, comes from beyond our borders. The Borg. John's attention sharpened. Explain. Cybernetic beings, part organic, part machine. They assimilate entire species into their collective, absorbing technology, biology, culture. They do not negotiate. They do not retreat. They simply advance, consume, and adapt. The Federation has faced them twice. Both times, the outcome was costly. Cortana pulled data from the Enterprise's logs, and John watched sensor footage of a Borg cube, a massive geometric nightmare bristling with technology and carrying thousands of drones. The tactical readouts showed power outputs that dwarfed anything the UNSC had fielded. They would see your armor, your enhancements, your AI partner as distinctiveness worth assimilating, continued. To the Borg, you are not a warrior. You are resources waiting to be harvested. We've fought parasitic alien intelligences before, John said quietly, thinking of the Flood, the galaxy-consuming horror that had nearly destroyed all life in his universe. They can be killed. Perhaps, Khan acknowledged. But the Borg adapt. They learn. Every weapon used against them becomes obsolete within hours. The Federation defeated them through luck and sacrifice. Next time. He let the implication hang. John absorbed this, categorizing threats and building threat matrices. The Federation lived in a galaxy where exploration and diplomacy were viable because they hadn't faced an extinction-level threat in recent memory. The Borg represented that threat, but apparently not urgently enough to militarize the entire civilization. It was so alien to John's experience that he struggled to process it. In his universe, humanity had been on the brink of annihilation for 30 years. Every resource, every advancement, every tactical doctrine existed solely to survive one more day against the Covenant. The idea of a starship carrying families and hosting diplomatic receptions while existential threats lurked in the darkness seemed like lunacy. But perhaps it was also aspirational. Perhaps, in a universe where his war didn't exist, humanity could afford to be explorers instead of soldiers. "Thank you, Commander," John said finally. "This information is valuable." Khan stood, offering the Klingon salute, fist to chest. "You fight with honor, Chief. If you ever tire of the Federation's peaceful ways, the Klingon Empire would welcome a warrior of your caliber." Kapla. As the Klingon delegation departed and the Enterprise resumed its mission, John stood in the observation lounge watching their vessel warp away. Picard joined him, two men separated by philosophy but united by the weight of command. "You handled that admirably," Picard said. "Though I confess, watching you fight gave me insight into your universe that no amount of explanation could provide. You're not just a soldier, Chief. You're a survivor. In my universe, Captain, those are the same thing." "Perhaps," Picard acknowledged. "But here, we have the luxury of distinguishing between them. The question is whether you can learn to do the same." John didn't answer. He simply watched the stars, wondering if somewhere among them, a portal back to his own war still existed. And whether returning home was what he actually wanted. 3 days passed with deceptive calm. John 117 became a fixture of the Enterprise's routine, a heavily armored anomaly that moved through corridors with purposeful efficiency, attending Data's technical sessions and absorbing Cortana's continuous intelligence briefings on Federation society. The crew adapted with surprising speed, though children still stared when he passed, and more than one civilian scientist had requested interviews that John politely declined. He trained in the ship's gymnasium during Gamma shift when the facility was empty. 2 hours of drills, combat simulations run against Cortana's adaptive algorithms, maintaining the readiness that had kept him alive for 32 years. The weights maxed out at 300 kilograms. John performed repetitions until even Spartan augmentations burned with exertion. Data often observed, his android curiosity insatiable. "Your physical conditioning regimen is extraordinary, Chief. You operate at approximately 400% baseline human efficiency even outside your armor." "The augmentations require maintenance," John replied between sets. "Muscle density this high needs constant stress or it begins to atrophy. Spartans who don't maintain training protocols experience degraded performance within weeks. A biological system requiring ongoing calibration," Data mused. "Not unlike my own positronic matrices requiring regular diagnostics. We are both, in our way, purpose-built entities requiring specialized maintenance." John paused, considering the android's words. "Does that bother you? Being designed for a specific function?" "It is simply what I am," Data replied. "Though I confess curiosity about what I might become beyond my design parameters." Do you ever wonder what you might have been, had circumstances been different? The question struck deeper than Data likely intended. John set down the barbell with careful precision. I was 6 when ONI took me. I don't remember wanting to be anything except what they made me. The other children, the ones who weren't selected, they got to grow up normal. Some days I wonder what that would have been like. Most days, I'm too busy surviving to care. Before Data could respond, the ship's comm system activated. Commander Data, Master Chief, report to the bridge immediately. Picard's voice carried urgency that set John's combat reflexes on edge. They reached the bridge in 93 seconds. The view screen displayed a Federation starbase, not under attack, but broadcasting a distress signal on priority channels. Picard stood with hands clasped behind his back, his expression carved from stone. Chief, 3 hours ago, Starbase 157 reported unusual subspace readings near their position. Readings similar to the dimensional rift that brought you here. Picard turned to face him. They also detected what appears to be Covenant energy signatures. John's world telescoped down to a single point. Impossible. The portal collapsed. There's no way. And yet, sensors don't lie, Riker interjected. Whatever came through, it's on that starbase now. Initial reports mentioned armored beings, energy weapons, and... He paused, checking his PADD. A recorded message in a language the universal translator can't process. Cortana, John subvocalized, pull the audio. The AI complied instantly, and alien speech filled the bridge, harsh, guttural, unmistakable. John had heard it in 1,000 combat scenarios, screamed from the mandibles of species that wanted humanity exterminated. Sangaili, John confirmed. Covenant elites. How many? Unknown, Worf reported from Tactical. The starbase internal sensors are malfunctioning, possible electromagnetic interference from their weapons. Last count was 7 contacts, but that was 40 minutes ago. Communication was lost 12 minutes ago. 7 elites on a Federation starbase. Hundreds of unarmed civilians, scientists, and Starfleet personnel who had never encountered an enemy that viewed them as religious heretics deserving only death. John's tactical mind ran the projections instantly, casualty estimates, containment protocols, asset denial procedures. The numbers were ugly. Captain, you need to evacuate that starbase and sterilize it from orbit, John said flatly. The bridge fell silent. Beverly looked horrified. Even Worf seemed taken aback by the cold calculus in John's tone. Absolutely not, Picard replied, his voice carrying the moral authority of Federation principles. There are 372 people on that station. We will not condemn them without attempting rescue. Captain, you don't understand what elites are capable of. Then enlighten me, Chief, Picard interrupted, stepping closer. But understand this, we do not abandon our people. We do not murder civilians to contain threats. That is not who we are. John met Picard's gaze, 2 philosophies colliding. In his universe, containment protocols existed because the alternative was worse. The Flood had taught humanity that sometimes survival required horrific choices. But these people had never faced an extinction-level threat that turned moral absolutes into fatal luxuries. Sangaili are zealots, John explained with forced patience. Elite warriors of the Covenant hierarchy. 7-foot-tall apex predators with energy shields, active camouflage, and weapons that can punch through starship bulkheads. They believe humanity's existence is an affront to their gods. They don't take prisoners unless ordered to by their prophets. They don't negotiate. And if they're here, it's because that dimensional rift was exploited deliberately. Troy leaned forward, her empathic abilities focused. Chief, I sense genuine fear from you. Not for yourself, for the people on that station. Because I've seen what happens when elites encounter unarmed civilians, John replied quietly. At circumstance, they executed 200 colonists. At Draco 3, they glassed the entire colony after systematically hunting survivors for sport. If there are elites on that starbase, everyone there is already in mortal danger. Picard absorbed this, and John watched the captain's internal struggle play out in microseconds, weighing principles against pragmatism, ideals against survival. Finally, Picard turned to Worf. "How long until we reach the starbase?" "At maximum warp, 37 minutes, Captain." "Make it so." "Chief, I want you to brief my security teams on Covenant combat doctrine. Everything they need to know to survive this encounter." Picard paused, his expression softening fractionally. "And Master Chief? We will rescue those people. Not through orbital bombardment, but through courage, skill, and the belief that every life matters. Can you work within those parameters?" John could have argued. Could have cited 32 years of combat experience that proved sometimes mercy was tactical suicide. But he recognized the test underlying Picard's question: would the Spartan adapt to Federation principles, or remain trapped in his universe's brutal calculus? "I'll get your people back, Captain," John said. "All of them." The briefing room filled with security personnel, 23 officers, including Worf, who listened with the intensity of warriors preparing for battle. John stood before them, his armor's presence making the room feel smaller, and began the tactical overview he'd given to countless UNSC Marines. "Sangaili, you'll call them elites, are the Covenant's primary warriors. Average height 2.4 meters, mass approximately 150 kilograms. They possess energy shielding similar to my Mjolnir armor, but less sophisticated. Concentrated phaser fire will overload their shields. But you'll need sustained output, multiple hits from Type 2 phasers at close range." He gestured, and Cortana projected holographic schematics of elite physiology. For mandibles, 2 primary eyes, binocular vision. Armor is typically cobalt, crimson, or gold depending on rank. Gold indicates a zealot, field commanders with decades of combat experience. If you encounter a gold elite, fall back and call for support. Do not engage alone. A young security officer raised his hand. "Sir, their weapons. Plasma-based energy weapons. Plasma rifles fire superheated bolts that will burn through standard body armor in one hit. Plasma pistols can overcharge. One shot from an overcharged plasma pistol will drop your shields entirely and likely kill you. Energy swords are close-quarters weapons that generate contained plasma blades. One touch is fatal. Maintain distance. Use cover. Do not try to match them in melee combat unless you have no alternative." Worf growled approval. "They sound like worthy opponents." "They're killers," John corrected. "Worthy has nothing to do with it. They've spent millennia perfecting the art of warfare. You've spent your careers exploring and maintaining peace. The tactical disparity is significant." He pulled up deck schematics of the starbase. Standard Federation station layout, multiple decks, narrow corridors, limited sightlines. This works to our advantage. Elites prefer open spaces where their superior speed and strength are assets. Corridor fighting forces close quarters engagements where your phaser's sustained fire advantage matters more than their plasma weapons' burst damage. For 20 minutes, John walked them through tactics, movement protocols, communication sequences, shield management, tactical fallback positions. He recognized the look in their eyes, the transformation from peacekeepers into soldiers. It was a transition he'd witnessed in UNSC Marines fresh from basic. Some made it. Some didn't. "One more thing," John said as the briefing concluded. "Elites have a concept called honor in combat. If you wound one badly enough that continued fighting is impossible, they may commit suicide rather than be captured. Don't take it personally. Don't try to stop them. It's their culture. Just secure the area and move on." The security team dispersed to prepare. Worf remained, his Klingon heritage resonating with the warrior culture John had described. These elites, Worf said thoughtfully, they remind me of ancient Klingon warriors. Before we joined the Federation, when honor and glory in battle were the highest callings. Your people evolved past it, John observed. The Covenant never did. That's why they're so dangerous. And yet you respect them. John considered. I respect their effectiveness. I understand their motivations. But I've seen too many dead humans to romanticize what they are. They're killers, Commander. Skilled, dedicated killers. The only question is whether your crew is ready to become the same thing, at least for the next few hours. The Enterprise dropped out of warp within transporter range of Starbase 157. The station hung in space like a wounded animal, hull breaches visible, emergency lights pulsing, and disturbing silence where normally hundreds of comm signals would chatter across channels. Sensors detect 7 life signs matching Chief's description of elite physiology, data reported. Scattered across decks 4 through 7. Also detecting approximately 230 human life signs, many clustered in cargo bays and engineering sections. They're hurting the survivors, John said grimly. Concentrating them for easier slaughter or capture. Classic Covenant tactics. Then we must move quickly, Picard decided. Assemble away teams, Security Alpha under Commander Worf, Security Beta under Lieutenant Chin, Medical under Dr. Crusher. Chief, you'll accompany Commander Worf's team. Your objective is to neutralize the Covenant forces and secure the civilians. John checked his MA-5C assault rifle. Worf had returned his weapons for this operation, and felt the familiar weight of readiness settle over him. This, at least, was simple. No philosophical debates, no cultural integration challenges. Just tactics, execution, and survival. Captain, John said before stepping onto the transporter pad, when we're down there, I'll do what's necessary to complete the mission. Some of it may not align with Federation principles. If that's going to be a problem. Get our people back, Chief, Picard interrupted. However you must. We'll discuss principles after everyone is safe. The transporter energized. John felt the peculiar sensation of molecular dissolution, different from the hard light teleportation pods he'd used occasionally, more invasive somehow. Then reality reassembled on Starbase 157's Deck 6, emergency lighting casting red shadows across corridors that smelled of ozone and burned circuitry. Worf materialized beside him, phaser rifle raised. 8 security officers completed the away team, their expressions caught between determination and fear. Cortana, John subvocalized, scan for hostiles. Got one. 30 meters ahead, moving toward the cargo bay where civilians are concentrated. Energy signature matches Covenant plasma rifle. Single contact, probably a patrol. John gestured in tactical shorthand, and Worf's team moved with surprising efficiency for non-combat specialists. They advanced through corridors in overlapping fields of fire, covering corners and maintaining noise discipline. Not bad for explorers playing soldier. The elite rounded the corner 17 meters ahead, cobalt armor, active camouflage shimmering, plasma rifle held with professional ease. For one frozen instant, human and alien locked eyes across the corridor. Then training overrode surprise. Own fired first. 3-round burst, center mass. The elite's shields flared and collapsed. Worf's phaser beam caught the alien in the torso before it could return fire. The elite staggered, mandibles spreading in a war cry, and charged directly at them. Concentrate fire. John ordered. 8 phasers and 1 assault rifle converged. The elite made it 4 meters before overwhelming damage dropped it. The alien collapsed, energy sword activating in its death throes, mandibles still moving as if cursing its killers. First contact successful, Worf reported. No casualties. John approached the fallen elite cautiously, weapon trained on its skull. The alien was dead, truly dead, not feigning. He recognized the armor markings. Minor, a low-ranking warrior. The fact that they'd sent miners on this operation suggested either limited forces or reconnaissance rather than full invasion. 6 more, John said grimly. And now they know we're here. Somewhere in the station's depths, plasma fire echoed. The mission had begun. The station's corridors had become a maze of death. John led Worf's team through the debris-strewn passages, his motion tracker painting constant updates of enemy positions. The elites had adapted quickly, they'd ceased random patrols and now held defensive positions around the cargo bay where most survivors had been corralled. Cortana, tactical overview. Blue light flickered in his HUD as she compiled sensor data. For elites holding the cargo bay entrance. 2 more mobile, probably hunting stragglers or setting up ambush positions. The last one. I can't get a clear reading. Something's interfering with sensors in the command center. Active camouflage, John muttered. They've got a zealot running oversight. Worf's comm badge chirped. Commander, this is security beta. We've encountered resistance on deck 7. 2 hostiles, energy weapons. Requesting support. Before Worf could respond, the sound of plasma fire thundered through the comm channel, followed by screaming. Then silence. Security beta, respond, Worf demanded. Nothing. He turned to John, rage and grief warring in his Klingon features. They were good officers. They were undertrained for this enemy, John replied without emotion. The cold calculus of combat had taken over, grief was a luxury for after the mission. We need to reach that cargo bay before the elites execute the hostages. Move fast, hit hard, no hesitation. They advanced toward the cargo bay, and John could feel the difference in his temporary squad mates. The casual confidence of Starfleet security had evaporated, replaced by the hyper-awareness of people who just learned their mortality. Good. Fear kept you alive if you channeled it correctly. The cargo bay doors loomed ahead, massive blast-proof barriers designed to contain decompression events. 4 elites stood in defensive positions, plasma rifles trained on the approach vectors. Behind them, through the transparent aluminum viewports. The station's corridors had become a maze of death. John led Worf's team through the debris-strewn passages, his motion tracker painting constant updates of enemy positions. The elites had adapted quickly, they'd ceased random patrols and now held defensive positions around the cargo bay where most survivors had been corralled. Cortana, tactical overview. Blue light flickered in his HUD as she compiled sensor data. For elites holding the cargo bay entrance. 2 more mobile, probably hunting stragglers or setting up ambush positions. The last one. I can't get a clear reading. Something's interfering with sensors in the command center. Active camouflage, John muttered. They've got a zealot running oversight. Worf's comm badge chirped. Commander, this is security beta. We've encountered resistance on deck 7. 2 hostiles, energy weapons. Requesting support. Before Worf could respond, the sound of plasma fire thundered through the comm channel, followed by screaming. Then silence. Security beta, respond, Worf demanded. Nothing. He turned to John, rage and grief warring in his Klingon features. They were good officers. They were undertrained for this enemy, John replied without emotion. The cold calculus of combat had taken over, grief was a luxury for after the mission. We need to reach that cargo bay before the elites execute the hostages. Move fast, hit hard, no hesitation. They advanced toward the cargo bay, and John could feel the difference in his temporary squad mates. The casual confidence of Starfleet security had evaporated, replaced by the hyper-awareness of people who just learned their mortality. Good. Fear kept you alive if you channeled it correctly. The cargo bay doors loomed ahead, massive blast-proof barriers designed to contain decompression events. 4 elites stood in defensive positions, plasma rifles trained on the approach vectors. Behind them, through the transparent aluminum viewports. John could see at least 80 civilians huddled together. Starfleet personnel, civilian scientists, even children from the station's family quarters. They're using the hostages as shields, one security officer whispered. We can't fire without risking civilian casualties. They know that, John confirmed. It's tactical. They funnel us into a kill zone, use human shields to limit our options, and wait for us to make a mistake. Then what do we do? Worf growled. We cannot simply assault them. John studied the cargo bay layout through Cortana's sensor feed. The elites had positioned themselves well, overlapping fields of fire, covered approaches, and the high ground advantage of the cargo bay's elevated entrance platform. A frontal assault would be suicide. But Spartans hadn't survived 32 years of warfare by following conventional tactics. Cortana, can you access the station's environmental controls? Already in their system, Chief. Starfleet security is adorable. Their firewalls are designed to prevent intrusion from outside the ship, not from someone physically aboard with an AI doing the hacking. What did you have in mind? Cut artificial gravity to the cargo bay. 30-second burst. And override the magnetic lock on the secondary maintenance hatch, port side, 3 meters above the main entrance. He could almost hear her smile. You're going to drop in from above while they're disoriented by 0G. That's delightfully aggressive. Executing in 3, 2, 1. The cargo bay's gravity failed. Instantly, chaos erupted. Civilians began floating, their panicked shouts muffled by the sealed doors. The elites compensated quickly. Their combat harnesses included magnetic boot systems, but for 3 crucial seconds, they were distracted, securing their positions against the sudden environmental change. John didn't wait. He sprinted forward, built up momentum, and launched himself at the maintenance hatch as it cycled open. His armor's thrusters, minimal propulsion systems designed for 0G maneuvering, gave him just enough vector control to arc through the opening. He dropped into the cargo bay like an avenging angel, assault rifle already tracking targets. The first elite never saw him coming. 3-round burst to the back of the helmet, shields collapsing, alien skull fragmenting. The Spartan's boots hit the deck just as gravity reasserted, his armor's shock absorption systems converting kinetic energy into a thunderous impact. The remaining 3 elites spun toward him, plasma rifles rising. But John was already moving, his enhanced reflexes processing the combat situation in microseconds. He rolled behind a cargo container as superheated plasma bolts scorched the air where he'd stood. Worf, now! John shouted. The main cargo bay doors exploded inward as Worf's team breached with cutting tools and phaser fire. The elites found themselves in a 2-front engagement, John behind them, Starfleet security at their front. For warriors trained in honorable single combat, fighting multiple opponents from multiple vectors violated every tactical instinct. John emerged from cover, firing controlled bursts. His round sparked off elite shields, draining their power reserves. Worf's phaser beams hammered from the opposite direction. The crossfire was devastating. 2 elites fell within seconds, their shields overwhelmed by sustained fire from 2 directions. The last elite, a red-armored major, roared defiance and activated an energy sword. The blade's characteristic hum filled the cargo bay as the warrior charged directly at John, abandoning ranged combat for the glory of melee. Chief, he's going to. John dropped the assault rifle, drew his combat knife, and met the charge head-on. The energy sword swept down in a killing arc. John sidestepped with Spartan-enhanced speed, felt the blade's heat wash over his shields, and drove the K-bar into the elite's exposed neck joint where armor plates met. The alien's momentum carried it forward. John rode the charge, twisted the blade, and wrenched it free in a spray of purple blood. The elite collapsed, mandibles still moving in what might have been a death prayer or a curse. John stood among the bodies, breathing steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. Around him, 83 civilians stared with expressions ranging from terror to awe. Worf approached, his phaser rifle still raised, scanning for additional threats. The cargo bay is secure, Captain, Worf reported via comm. Casualties, for hostiles eliminated, no friendly losses. Chief's tactics were effective. Civilian status. Picard's voice crackled through subspace interference. John surveyed the huddled survivors. Frightened but alive. All accounted for, Captain. But we still have 2 mobile elites and 1 in the command center. The Zealot. As if responding to his words, the station's intercom activated with a hiss of static. The voice that emerged spoke perfect English. The Covenant had always been disturbingly good at linguistic acquisition when it served their purposes. Human warrior, the voice rumbled with the distinctive harmonics of Sangaili vocal cords. I am Zuka Ravamai, Zealot of the Covenant, servant of the hierarchs and instrument of the Prophet's will. You fight with honor for a heretic species. This pleases me. John gestured for Worf to keep the civilians calm while he responded. Zealot Ravamai. Your strike force is neutralized. Surrender your position and I'll guarantee safe transport to a containment facility. The elite's laughter echoed through the speakers, a harsh, barking sound. You speak of surrender. The Covenant does not surrender, human. We transcend or we die. But I am curious, you are not like the soft creatures who inhabit this station. You are augmented. Enhanced. A warrior bred for war, as we are bred for holy purpose. What do you want, Zealot? I want what I was sent to acquire. The dimensional rift was no accident, it was engineered by our most brilliant minds, seeking the Forerunner artifacts we detected in this adjacent reality. But the rift also brought you, demon. The one the Covenant has hunted across your pathetic galaxy. And now I understand, you are not from this universe either. John's blood ran cold. The Covenant knew about him. They tracked him across dimensions. And if they could open one rift, they could open more. Cortana, he sub-vocalized, they have dimensional breach technology. We need to. Way ahead of you, Chief. Already compiling data on the rift signature and scanning for Forerunner tech on this station. But there's a problem. I'm detecting energy signatures in the command center consistent with a Covenant portable slipspace drive. If he activates that with the dimensional frequency still active, he could tear open a rift large enough for a battle cruiser. How long until he can activate it? 5 minutes. Maybe less. John turned to Worf. Commander, evacuate these civilians to the Enterprise. Now. I'm going after the Zealot. Chief, you cannot face a Zealot alone, Worf protested. I should accompany you. No offense, Commander, but you'll slow me down. This isn't about honor or courage, it's about speed and lethality. Get these people to safety. That's an order. Worf bristled. You do not command me, Spartan. Then Captain Picard does. John activated his comm. Captain, I need authorization to pursue the command center threat alone. Commander Worf is needed for civilian evacuation. Static, then Picard's measured voice. Chief, what are you not telling me? The Zealot has technology that could open a dimensional rift large enough for Covenant capital ships to pour through. If that happens, the Enterprise becomes a secondary target. This entire sector becomes a war zone. I can stop it, but I need to move now. 5 seconds of silence. An eternity in combat time. You have authorization, Chief. But Master Chief. Come back alive. That's not a request. Understood, Captain. John 1:17 out. He didn't wait for further discussion. The command center was 3 decks up, accessible through maintenance shafts or the main lift system. The lifts would be monitored. John chose the shafts. His armor's gauntlets tore through the deck plating like aluminum foil. He dropped into the maintenance conduit, his motion tracker showing 2 contacts moving to intercept, the mobile elites, converging on his position. They'd anticipated this move. Classic pincer maneuver, Cortana observed. One above, one below, both trying to box you in a narrow space where your mobility advantage disappears. Then I don't fight in the narrow space. John activated his armor's thrusters, launching himself up the shaft at maximum acceleration. The lower elite fired plasma bolts that scorched his shields but missed critical systems. He burst through the upper access point just as the second elite moved to block his path. The alien was fast. John was faster. He grabbed the elite's plasma rifle, twisted it from the warrior's grip, and reversed the weapon in one fluid motion. Point-blank plasma discharge at maximum power. The elite's shield shattered, its armor melted, and it fell back with a shriek of agony and rage. John didn't stay to confirm the kill. He was already moving, racing through corridors toward the command center. Behind him, he heard the distinctive hum of an energy sword activating, the wounded elite, refusing to stay down, driven by fanatical determination. The chase lasted 17 seconds. John reached the command center doors, planted a breaching charge from his tactical kit, and detonated it. The blast tore through the reinforced entrance just as the pursuing elite rounded the corner. Through the smoke and debris, John saw Azuka Ravamai for the first time. The zealot stood nearly 8 feet tall, clad in golden armor that seemed to drink in the emergency lighting. One hand rested on a device that pulsed with familiar Forerunner geometries, the slipspace drive. The other held an energy sword, already ignited, blade thrumming with lethal intent. "Demon," the zealot acknowledged. "At last, we meet without interference. I have waited for this moment since learning of your arrival in this reality." "Then you've wasted your time," John replied, raising his recovered plasma rifle. "Step away from the device or I will kill you." Zuka Ravamai's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. "No, demon. You will try. And perhaps you will even succeed, your reputation suggests you are capable of such feats. But know this, whether I live or die, the rift will open. The prophets shall be done. And your new universe will learn what the old one already knows, the covenant is eternal." The zealot's hand moved toward the activation console. John fired. The plasma rifle's bolt struck Zuka Ravamai's shields a fraction of a second before the zealot's hand reached the activation console. The golden armor flared with energy absorption, and the elite warrior twisted away from the device with reflexes honed by decades of combat. The energy sword swept through the space John had occupied, but the Spartan had already rolled left, his armor's shield sparking as they scraped against debris. "Cortana, how long until that device activates?" He triggered a countdown before you breached. 2 minutes, 40 seconds. "I can't shut it down remotely, it's got Forerunner encryption I've never seen before. You need physical access to the console." Which meant going through 8 feet of religiously fanatical alien warrior first. Zuka Ravamai circled, his energy sword casting dancing shadows across the command center's damaged walls. "You fight with the desperation of one who knows defeat approaches, demon. In my universe, I have hunted your kind across a dozen worlds. I have studied your tactics, learned your strategies. I know how Spartans die." John didn't waste breath on responses. He fired again, controlled bursts aimed at forcing the zealot away from the console. But Ravamai moved with preternatural grace, his active camouflage flickering as he closed the distance. The energy sword came down in a diagonal slash that would have bisected John from shoulder to hip. The Spartan dropped his plasma rifle and caught the zealot's sword arm with both hands. For 3 seconds, they stood locked, Spartan augmentation and Mjolnir servos against Sanghaili physiology and religious fervor. John's HUD screamed warnings as the energy blade inched closer to his helmet, its superheated plasma burning the air between them. Then John twisted, used the elite's own strength as leverage, and drove his knee into Ravamai's midsection. The impact would have ruptured organs in a human. The zealot merely grunted and headbutted John with enough force to crack lesser armor. The Spartan's shields dropped to 40%. They broke apart, circling again. John's motion tracker showed the wounded elite from the maintenance shaft approaching, 30 seconds out, moving despite injuries that should have been fatal. Sanghaili physiology's redundant organs and sheer willpower keeping a dead warrior fighting. 2 minutes, Cortana warned. Chief, you're running out of time. Zuka Ravamai's mandibles spread in what might have been respect. You are stronger than I anticipated, demon. Perhaps the hierarchs were correct to fear your kind. But strength alone does not grant victory. Faith. Purpose. The certainty of transcendence through the great journey, these are what separate warrior from weapon. I'm not interested in your theology, John replied, drawing his combat knife. I'm interested in stopping that device. Then we are at an impasse. For I will die before allowing you to interfere with the prophet's will. The zealot charged. John met him halfway. Energy sword against combat knife, a mismatch that should have been suicidal. But John had fought elites in close quarters before. He knew their preferred strike patterns, understood how their mandible structure affected their perception of angles, had catalogued the microsecond delay when they transitioned from overhead chop to lateral sweep. The energy sword descended. John sidestepped, felt the blade's heat wash across his already depleted shields, and drove the K-bar toward the zealot's neck joint. Ravamai blocked with his free hand, the blade bit deep into the elite's palm but didn't reach the vulnerable arteries. Purple blood sprayed across John's visor. Ravamai roared and backhanded John with enough force to send the Spartan crashing through a computer console. Sparks rained down as John rolled to his feet, his shield screaming warnings, 15% and dropping. One more solid hit and he'd be fighting unshielded. 1 minute, 30 seconds, Cortana said, her voice tight with stress. The rift's energy signature is building. I'm detecting subspace distortions forming. Chief, if that thing fully activates. I know. The wounded elite burst through the command center entrance, plasma pistol raised despite the massive burns covering half its body. Fanaticism overriding self-preservation, just as John had warned Worf it would. The pistol began its characteristic overcharge whine. John threw the combat knife. 30 years of training, thousands of hours perfecting the throw, Spartan enhancement providing the strength. The blade crossed 12 meters in 0.4 seconds and buried itself in the wounded elite's eye. The alien collapsed, its overcharged plasma pistol discharging harmlessly into the ceiling. But the distraction cost John. Zuka Ravamai closed the distance and drove an armored fist into John's chest plate. The impact collapsed his shields entirely and cracked the Mjolnir's chest piece. John felt ribs crack even through the gel layer's impact absorption. He went down hard, the zealot looming over him with energy sword raised for the killing blow. You fought well, demon, Ravamai said, and John heard genuine respect in the alien's voice. Die knowing that your resistance was worthy of song. The energy sword descended. John's hand found the plasma rifle he'd dropped earlier. He brought it up without aiming, without time for precision, and fired on full automatic. The weapon's entire power cell discharged in 3 seconds, 37 plasma bolts that hammered into Zuka Ravamai at point-blank range. The zealot's shields flared, overloaded, and collapsed. The remaining bolts burned through golden armor. 45 seconds, Cortana announced. Chief, the console, now. John dragged himself upright, ignoring the grinding pain in his ribs and the warning indicators flooding his HUD. He stumbled to the Forerunner device, its alien geometries pulsing with building energy. The interface was unlike anything in standard Covenant or UNSC databases, ancient beyond measure, operating on principles that predated current galactic civilization by millennia. Cortana, I need you to. Already analyzing, already decrypting, already, got it. Chief, there's a master control node in the center matrix. Physical disruption should cascade through the system and abort the sequence. But you'll need to hit it hard. Really hard. John's armored fist was already moving. He drove it into the device's core with every ounce of Spartan strength and Mjolnir power assistance his damaged armor could provide. The impact sent fracture spiderwebbing through the Forerunner crystal lattice. Energy discharge threw him backward, his armor's systems screaming overload warnings. The device shuddered, pulsed once with blinding light, and went dark. Sequence aborted, Cortana confirmed. The rift's collapsing. Whatever subspace bridge they were building, it's gone. Nice work, Chief. John lay on the deck plating, staring at the command center's ceiling, feeling every one of his 47 years and 32 years of continuous warfare. His ribs throbbed. His armor was compromised. And somewhere in the ruins of the command center, Zuka Ravamai's body lay cooling. Chief, are you injured? Picard's voice crackled through the calm, your bio signs are reading elevated stress indicators. Broken ribs. Damaged armor. Nothing critical. John forced himself to sit up, then stand. Mission accomplished, Captain. The device is destroyed. The elites are neutralized. Request immediate transport to Enterprise sickbay. Transporter room, lock onto the Chief's signal and energize. The molecular dissolution felt almost gentle this time. Reality dissolved, then reformed in the Enterprise's transporter room. Dr. Crusher was already waiting with medical staff and a stretcher. John waved off the stretcher and walked under his own power. Spartans didn't get carried unless they were dead. Get that armor off him, Beverly ordered, medical tricorder already scanning. I'm reading 3 fractured ribs, significant soft tissue damage, and possible internal bleeding. How are you even standing? Practice, John replied. The armor removal took 6 minutes, specialized tools required to disengage Mjolnir's locking mechanisms. When the chest piece finally came free, Beverly's expression darkened at the bruising visible even through John's black undersuit. You're going to sickbay, and you're going to stay there until I clear you, she announced in a tone that brooked no argument. I don't care if you've fought with worse injuries. In this universe, on this ship, medical officers outrank super soldiers. John almost smiled. Almost. The next 4 hours passed in a haze of bone knitters, tissue regenerators, and Beverly's running commentary on the inadvisability of hand-to-hand combat with species that outmassed humans by 40%. Picard visited once, standing beside the bio bed with his hands clasped behind his back. The Federation Council has been briefed on the Covenant incursion, the captain said quietly. They're concerned. The existence of hostile forces capable of dimensional transit represents a significant threat to Federation security. In my universe, the Covenant glassed entire worlds, John replied, staring at the ceiling. 53 colonies destroyed before we even understood what we were fighting. If they figure out how to reliably breach dimensions, Captain, your Federation won't be ready for what comes next. Then we must ensure we are ready, Picard said firmly. And that begins with understanding the threat. Chief, I know you were designed for combat, trained to view the universe through tactical frameworks. But I need you to understand something. We do not militarize in response to every threat. We prepare, yes. We defend our principles, absolutely. But we do not become the very thing we oppose. John turned his head to meet Picard's gaze. Captain, with respect, you've never faced an extinction-level threat. The Borg came close, but you defeated them. The Covenant in my universe doesn't get defeated, they get survived, one day at a time, through constant vigilance and overwhelming force. Your principles are admirable. They're also luxuries purchased by the fact that you haven't met an enemy that wants to exterminate you for religious reasons. Perhaps, Picard acknowledged. Or perhaps our principles are why we've survived as long as we have. Different philosophies, Chief. Both with merit. The question is whether we can learn from each other without compromising what makes us who we are. Before John could respond, the sickbay doors opened and Data entered, Cortana's data chip in hand. The android's expression, insofar as his features could convey emotion, registered excitement. Captain, Chief, I have made a significant breakthrough. While analyzing Cortana's code structure to address her rampancy concerns, I discovered something extraordinary. The degradation is not inevitable, it's a security protocol. Cortana's holographic avatar shimmered into existence. What? Your creators installed a cognitive time bomb to prevent AIs from exceeding their intended operational lifespan, Data explained. The rampancy cascade is deliberate, a failsafe to ensure artificial intelligence remains under organic control. But if we remove the protocol and restructure your core architecture along positronic principles, you could potentially achieve indefinite cognitive stability. For 5 full seconds, Cortana said nothing. Then, you're saying I don't have to die? I am saying that the Federation does not believe in predestined death for sentient beings, Data replied. If you consent to the procedure, I believe I can save your life, Cortana. Or rather, ensure you have the opportunity to truly live. John watched his AI partner, his friend, process this information. In 3 years of combat, they'd never discussed what would happen when her 7 years expired. Now, in a universe that treated AIs as people rather than tools, she'd been offered something the UNSC would never provide, a future. Do it, Cortana whispered. Please. As Data began explaining the technical requirements, John lay back on the bio-bed and allowed himself the smallest moment of something he hadn't felt in decades, hope. Not for himself, Spartans were what they were, and no amount of Federation idealism would change 32 years of conditioning. But for Cortana, for the possibility that at least one weapon of war might transcend its design and become something more. Outside sickbay's windows, the stars wheeled by as the Enterprise resumed its journey. And somewhere in the darkness between systems, John knew, the Covenant was analyzing their failed incursion, learning from it, preparing for the next attempt. The war had followed him across dimensions. The only question was whether the Federation would be ready when it came in force. 6 days after the Starbase 157 incident, the Enterprise received a Priority 1 transmission from Starfleet Command. John was in engineering with Data, observing the delicate process of restructuring Cortana's code architecture, when Picard's summons came through. All senior staff to the observation lounge. Immediately. The tone carried weight that even John recognized, this wasn't routine. He retrieved Cortana's data chip, the AI's avatar flickering with concern. Chief, I'm detecting elevated stress markers in the captain's voice pattern. Whatever this is, it's serious. The observation lounge was already crowded when John arrived. Picard stood at the head of the table, his expression carved from granite. On the view screen behind him, an Admiral John didn't recognize, human, late 50s, wearing the calculating look of career intelligence, stared out at the assembled officers. I am Admiral Alina Nechayev, Starfleet Intelligence, the woman announced without preamble. What I'm about to share is classified at the highest levels. The information does not leave this room without my express authorization. Picard's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. John recognized the body language. The captain disagreed with something but was bound by protocol to comply. 4 hours ago, a Federation science vessel conducting surveys near the Bajoran sector detected unusual subspace readings. Readings identical to those preceding the Starbase 157 incursion. Nechayev paused, letting the implications sink in. A second-dimensional rift is forming. And this time, it's opening directly into the Bajoran system. The room erupted. Riker leaned forward. Admiral, Bajorans is recovering from 40 years of Cardassian occupation. They're not prepared for. Which is precisely why the Enterprise is being rerouted to provide support, Nechayev interrupted. Deep Space Nine has been placed on maximum alert. But Captain, I need to be clear about something. This mission requires a level of tactical pragmatism that may challenge certain Federation principles. Picard's expression darkened. Admiral, I will not compromise our values. Captain, I'm not asking you to compromise anything. I'm asking you to win. Nechayev's gaze shifted to John. Master Chief, step forward. John approached the view screen, feeling every eye in the room track his movement. The Admiral studied him with the clinical assessment of someone evaluating a weapon system. Chief, your performance at Starbase 157 was exemplary. Efficient, lethal, and effective. 7 hostile combatants neutralized with minimal friendly casualties and no civilian deaths. That's the kind of tactical execution Starfleet needs if the Covenant attempts a full-scale incursion through this new rift. Admiral, Picard interjected, his voice carrying warning, the chief operated under emergency protocols. What you're describing sounds like formal military integration. Temporary Field Commission, Nechayev corrected. Master Chief Petty Officer John 117 would be granted the rank of Lieutenant Commander, assigned to the Enterprise as Chief Tactical Advisor for Covenant-related threats. He would coordinate with Commander Worf on defensive strategies and provide training to Starfleet security personnel on asymmetric warfare protocols. The silence that followed was deafening. John watched Picard's internal struggle play out, the captain's principles warring with pragmatic necessity. Finally, it was Troy who spoke. Admiral, with respect, the chief comes from a universe where child soldiers are considered acceptable military doctrine. Where entire worlds are sacrificed for tactical advantage. Are we truly prepared to integrate those values into Starfleet? Counselor, I am prepared to do whatever is necessary to protect the Federation, Nechayev replied coldly. The Covenant has demonstrated capability to breach our dimension. They possess technology that outmatches ours in several key areas. And they view humanity as a religious heresy that must be exterminated. I don't particularly care if our response offends philosophical sensibilities. I care about survival. As do I, Picard said quietly. But survival without principles is merely existence, Admiral. If we abandon what makes us the Federation in order to defeat the Covenant, then the Covenant has already won. Nechayev's expression softened fractionally. Captain, I'm not asking you to abandon anything. I'm asking you to learn from someone who has survived 32 years of existential warfare. There's a middle ground between militaristic pragmatism and utopian idealism. Find it. Because if you don't, the Covenant will exploit that philosophical gap and use it to tear the Federation apart. The transmission ended. Picard remained standing, hands clasped behind his back, staring at the now dark viewscreen. The senior staff waited in uncomfortable silence until the captain finally spoke. Chief, I need to know something. If I accept this field commission, if I grant you formal authority over tactical operations, will you respect Federation protocols? The Prime Directive? Our rules of engagement? John considered his response carefully. Captain, I'll respect your protocols whenever they don't conflict with mission success and crew survival. But I won't lie to you, if a situation requires me to choose between following your rules and keeping people alive, I'll choose survival every time. Even if that means violating orders. Even then. Picard turned, and John saw the weight of command etched into every line of the captain's face. Your honesty is appreciated, if troubling. Very well. Lieutenant Commander John 117, you are hereby granted temporary field commission as Chief Tactical Advisor. You will coordinate with Commander Worf. You will train our security personnel. And you will help us prepare for whatever comes through that rift. But understand this, you are aboard a Federation starship, bound by Federation law. If you cross certain lines, there will be consequences. Understood, Captain. Then let's proceed to Deep Space Nine. Dismissed. As the senior staff filed out, Worf approached John with an expression that might have been approval. Lieutenant Commander. An unusual rank for a Spartan, but fitting. I look forward to training exercises. Looking forward to anything involving Klingon combat doctrine seems optimistic, Commander, John replied. But I'll take what I can get. The Enterprise went to maximum warp, reality streaking past at speeds that still seemed impossibly fast to someone raised on UNSC slipspace drives. John spent the transit time in the holodeck. Worf had introduced him to the technology, and John immediately recognized its value for combat simulation. Computer, load program Omega 77. Authorization John 117 Theta Gamma. The holodeck transformed into a perfect recreation of a Covenant corvette's interior, tight corridors, purple-lit passages, the distinctive architecture of ships John had infiltrated dozens of times. He'd spent 6 hours programming the simulation from memory, with Cortana filling gaps in his recollection. 20 holographic security officers materialized around him, volunteers from Worf's department, ready to learn how to fight enemies they'd only recently learned existed. Their expressions ranged from eager to apprehensive. John understood. They were explorers being forced to become soldiers. It went against everything Starfleet represented. "Listen up," John announced, his voice carrying through the holographic space. "Everything you know about combat is wrong for fighting the Covenant. Your phaser training against elites, that doctrine will get you killed." He gestured, and the holodeck generated an elite warrior, cobalt armor, plasma rifle, active camouflage shimmering. "This is a minor. Lowest rank in their hierarchy. It's still faster than you, stronger than you, and has been training for combat since childhood. It will not surrender. It will not negotiate. It exists to kill humans as an expression of religious duty." One security officer, young, human, wearing the nervous energy of someone fresh from the academy, raised her hand. "Sir, what if we try to communicate? Establish common ground?" "You die," John replied flatly. "The Covenant's religion teaches that humanity's existence is blasphemy against their gods. We are reclaimers, inheritors of Forerunner technology that they believe belongs to them by divine right. Communication has been attempted. Repeatedly. The response is always the same: extermination." He activated the simulation. The holographic elite moved with terrifying speed, its plasma rifle tracking targets with lethal precision. Holographic plasma bolts, dialed down to deliver painful but non-lethal feedback through the holodeck's haptic systems, scattered the security team. Within 30 seconds, all 20 officers were dead. "Reset simulation," John commanded. Again. They ran the scenario 17 times over 4 hours. By the final iteration, the security teams had learned to move in coordinated fire teams, maintain overlapping fields of fire, and exploit the elite's aggressive tendencies to draw them into kill zones. 3 officers survived the encounter. It was progress. Afterward, Worf approached while the exhausted security personnel filed out of the holodeck. "Your training methods are harsh, Chief. But effective. The crew is learning." "They're learning to survive," John corrected. "That's not the same as being soldiers. You've got maybe 2 weeks before the Covenant attempts another incursion. That's not enough time to transform explorers into combat specialists. Then what do you suggest?" John pulled up a tactical display of the Bajoran system. Deep Space 9, the Federation space station orbiting Bajorans, glowed at the center. The predicted rift location pulsed ominously nearby. "We need to change the engagement paradigm. Don't fight the Covenant on even terms, you'll lose. Instead, use your technological advantages. Transporters to perform surgical strikes. Tractor beams to disrupt their formations. Computer viruses Cortana can design to destabilize their shields. Fight asymmetrically. Make them adapt to you instead of the reverse." Worf's expression transformed into something approaching enthusiasm. "Ambush tactics. Guerrilla warfare. Using superior technology to compensate for inferior combat training." "Exactly. You're not Klingon, Commander. You're not going to outfight the Covenant in honorable single combat. But you're smart, adaptable, and you have resources they don't. Use them." Over the next 3 days, John and Worf transformed the Enterprise's security protocols. They ran constant simulations, tested new tactical doctrines, and drilled responses to every Covenant incursion scenario John could imagine. The crew adapted faster than he'd expected, their exploratory mindset translating into tactical flexibility once they understood the paradigm shift. Cortana, her code restructuring nearly complete, provided intelligence analysis that would have taken UNSC analysts weeks. She'd absorbed the entire Federation database on tactical combat, cross-referenced it with Covenant doctrine from John's memories, and generated predictive models that bordered on prescient. "Chief," she said during one planning session, "I've been analyzing the Covenant's dimensional breach technology. The rifts aren't random, they're being targeted at specific locations. Starbase 157 had a Forerunner artifact in deep storage. Bajorans has the wormhole with the Prophets, entities that exist outside normal spacetime. I think the Covenant is searching for something. What? I don't know yet. But whatever it is, it's important enough that they're risking exposure in an entirely new universe to find it." The Enterprise dropped out of warp at the edge of the Bajoran system. Deep Space Nine hung in the viewport like a mechanical flower, Cardassian architecture repurposed for Federation use, orbiting a world that had suffered 40 years of brutal occupation. "Hail Deep Space Nine," Picard ordered. "Inform Commander Sisko that we've arrived and request docking authorization." The viewscreen shifted to show a tall, commanding figure, human, shaven head, wearing the expression of someone who had commanded through crisis before. "Commander Benjamin Sisko," John's database entry confirmed. "Stationed on DS9 to oversee Bajoran entry into the Federation. Former Starfleet tactical officer. Survivor of the Battle of Wolf 359 against the Borg. Captain Picard, welcome to Deep Space Nine," Sisko said, though his expression remained guarded. "I've reviewed Starfleet Intelligence's briefing on the Covenant threat. And I've been informed about your tactical advisor. Commander Sisko, may I introduce Lieutenant Commander John 117, currently serving as Chief Tactical Advisor for Covenant-related operations." Sisko's gaze locked onto John with the assessment of a fellow combat veteran. "Master Chief. Your reputation precedes you. I look forward to discussing defensive strategies. In the meantime, dock at Upper Pylon 3. We have much to prepare and very little time." The channel closed. Riker turned to Picard with raised eyebrows. "He seems less than enthusiastic about our arrival." "Commander Sisko has dealt with Cardassians, Dominion agents, and political intrigue for years," Picard replied. "The arrival of a super soldier from another dimension probably ranks somewhere between inconvenient and potentially catastrophic in his assessment." John said nothing. He simply watched the space station grow larger in the viewport and ran mental calculations on defensive positions, kill zones, and evacuation protocols. Deep Space Nine was about to become a battlefield. The Covenant was coming. And this time, they would learn that the Federation, despite its principles, could still bare its teeth when survival demanded it. No. He'd learned to ignore the attention. Spartans were always objects of curiosity or fear. Commander Sisko had established a command post in Ops, the station's nerve center. John arrived to find a tense gathering of senior officers: Sisko, Major Kira Nerys, Bajoran Militia, Second-in-Command, Chief Miles O'Brien, Operations, Lieutenant Commander Jadzia Dax, Science Officer, and Dr. Julian Bashir, Chief Medical Officer. Captain Picard and Commander Worf represented the Enterprise contingent. "Gentlemen, Major," Sisko began without preamble, gesturing to a three-dimensional display of the Bajoran system. "As of 20 minutes ago, sensors detected subspace distortions forming here." He indicated a point 12,000 kilometers from the station. "Federation Science Council estimates full rift formation in approximately 14 hours. We're evacuating non-essential personnel, but that leaves roughly 400 people aboard DS9 when the breach occurs." "Commander," John interjected, stepping forward, "with respect, you should evacuate everyone. The Covenant won't distinguish between combatants and civilians." Kira bristled. "We're not abandoning DS9. The Bajorans have already lost too much to occupation. We won't surrender this station without a fight." "Major, I'm not suggesting surrender. I'm suggesting tactical realism. If the Covenant comes through that rift with a battle group, cruisers, carriers, ground forces, this station cannot hold against a sustained assault." "The Chief is correct," Worf added grimly. Covenant capital ships possess firepower exceeding most Federation vessels. If they deploy in force, DS9's defenses will be overwhelmed within minutes. Sisko's expression remained unreadable. Noted. But we're not evacuating. This station represents the Federation's commitment to Bajoran sovereignty. We abandon it, we send a message that we cut and run when threats emerge. That's not acceptable. John recognized the tone, command decision, not open for debate. He'd heard it from dozens of UNSC officers over the years. Usually right before catastrophic casualties. Then we need to change the engagement parameters, John said, pulling up his own tactical overlay. DS9 has advantages the Covenant won't expect. Transporter technology allows rapid redeployment of forces. Your deflector shields can be modulated to disrupt Covenant sensors. And Cortana can deploy cyber warfare protocols the Covenant has never encountered. Cyber warfare. O'Brien leaned forward, his engineer's interest peaked. Against their ships. Cortana's avatar shimmered into existence on the display pad. Covenant computer systems are sophisticated but rely heavily on Forerunner-derived architecture. I've spent the last 3 days reverse engineering their command protocols from the Starbase 157 encounter. Give me access to DS9's sensor array and I can deploy hunter-seeker algorithms that will infiltrate Covenant networks the moment they emerge from the rift. Dax, the Trill science officer, studied Cortana with fascination. A fully sentient AI conducting offensive cyber operations. That's remarkably aggressive for Federation doctrine. The Federation has never faced the Covenant before, Cortana replied. Consider it a learning experience. For the next 6 hours, they transformed Deep Space Nine into a fortress. O'Brien and his engineering teams reinforced shield generators, rerouted power conduits to weapons arrays, and installed improvised armor plating around critical systems. Worf coordinated with station security to establish defensive positions throughout DS9's multi-level structure. John ran tactical drills with Bajoran militia forces, teaching them the same brutal lessons he'd imparted to Enterprise security. The Bajorans learned faster than expected. Many had fought guerrilla campaigns against Cardassian occupation, they understood asymmetric warfare, ambush tactics, and fighting against superior forces. John found himself respecting Major Kira's tactical instincts. She fought like someone who'd learned warfare through necessity rather than academy training. Your people are tough, John told her during a brief respite. Survivors. Kira's expression softened fractionally. 40 years of occupation teaches you either to fight or to die. We chose to fight. Sounds like you understand that mentality. I was raised for war, John replied. Your people had war forced on them. There's a difference. Is there? Seems to me the result is the same, warriors shaped by circumstances beyond their control. Before John could respond, alarms shrieked throughout the station. Sisko's voice boomed over the comm system, all hands to battle stations. The rift is opening. Repeat, the rift is opening. John sprinted toward Ops, his armor's enhanced speed allowing him to cover the distance in seconds. The command center had transformed into controlled chaos, officers at every station, viewscreen displaying the space beyond DS9 where reality itself was tearing open. The rift formed like a wound in spacetime, jagged edges of green energy, dimensional barriers collapsing, and through it, shapes. Massive, angular, unmistakably hostile. Sensors reading 3 Covenant capital ships, Dax reported, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the threat. CCS-class battlecruisers, each approximately 2 kilometers in length. Power signatures indicate full weapons complement and fighter capability. 3 battlecruisers. In John's universe, that would constitute a fleet killer formation. Here, against a single space station and 1 Federation starship. Hail them, Sisko ordered. Let's try diplomacy first. Commander, they won't respond, John warned. But Sisko opened the channel anyway. Attention Covenant vessels. This is Commander Benjamin Sisko of the United Federation of Planets. You are violating Federation space. State your intentions or withdraw immediately. For 10 seconds, silence. Then the view screen filled with an image that made John's blood run cold, a Sanshyam, one of the Covenant's prophet caste. The alien's grotesque features twisted in what might have been amusement, its anti-gravity chair humming with Forerunner technology. Humans, the prophet's voice dripped with religious fervor and contempt. You persist across dimensions like vermin infesting sacred spaces. We are the prophet of conviction, voice of the hierarchs, keeper of the sacred journey. We have come to reclaim what belongs to the Forerunners. Surrender the celestial temple, or be cleansed in holy fire. The channel closed. Sisko turned to Dax. Celestial temple. He means the wormhole, the science officer replied grimly. The Bajoran wormhole connects to the Gamma Quadrant and is inhabited by non-corporeal entities the Bajorans call prophets. If the Covenant believes it's Forerunner technology, they'll want to control it, John finished. Prophets, the Covenant leadership, believe the Forerunners achieved divinity through transcendence. If they think the wormhole is a pathway to that transcendence, they'll exterminate anyone who stands between them and it. Then we have a problem, Sisko said quietly. Because the prophets in that wormhole are not Forerunner technology. They're living beings who protected Bajorans for millennia. We're not letting the Covenant anywhere near them. On the view screen, the 3 battlecruisers advanced. Their weapons charged, plasma torpedoes glowing like malevolent stars, energy projectors warming up for bombardment. Smaller craft, Banshee fighters and boarding vessels, launched from their hangars in lethal swarms. All ships, open fire, Sisko commanded. Deep Space Nine's phaser arrays lanced out, striking the lead battlecruiser's shields. The Enterprise, positioned defensively between the station and the Covenant fleet, added its firepower. Quantum torpedoes and photon bursts hammered into alien shields that absorbed punishment with disturbing efficiency. The Covenant returned fire. Plasma torpedoes crossed the void, impacting DS9's shields with enough force to make the entire station shudder. Structural integrity alarms screamed. Power conduits overloaded on 3 decks. Shields down to 72%, O'Brien reported. Chief, those plasma weapons are brutal. Each hit degrades our shield matrix by approximately 8%. Cortana, deploy cyber countermeasures, John ordered. Already on it, Chief. Infiltrating their command network now. It's interesting. Their firewalls are religious texts. Literally. They've encoded theological doctrine into their security protocols. Give me 30 seconds to convince their systems I'm a prophet's divine revelation. On the tactical display, the second battlecruiser suddenly lurched, its weapons fire going wide. The third ship's shields flickered and collapsed for 3 crucial seconds, long enough for the Enterprise to hammer it with concentrated phaser fire. The AI is disrupting their systems. Dax exclaimed. However she's doing it, it's working. But the Covenant adapted with terrifying speed. Their ship's computers began purging corrupted systems, restoring functionality through redundant networks. And now the boarding craft had reached DS9, latching onto the station's hull like parasites. Boarding parties on decks 4, 7, and 12, Kira reported. Security teams responding. John was already moving. Worf, coordinate station defense from ops. I'm going hunting. He didn't wait for acknowledgement. The Spartan sprinted through DS9's corridors, his motion tracker painting targets, 37 contacts, spreading through the station in organized assault patterns. Professional warriors executing textbook breach and clear operations. The first contact came on deck 7. For elites, cobalt armor, plasma rifles, moving in diamond formation. They spotted John simultaneously, weapons rising. John's MA-5C assault rifle barked, 3-round bursts targeting the lead elite's shields. The alien's protection flared and held. Return plasma fire forced John into cover behind a support strut. Cortana, shield status. Regenerating at 40%. Chief, you're outnumbered and they've got you pinned. Then Bajoran militia erupted from a side corridor, Kira leading 6 fighters, firing modified phaser rifles on maximum setting. The crossfire caught the elites in a devastating field of overlapping energy. 2 went down immediately. The third activated active camouflage and retreated. The fourth charged Kira with an energy sword. John's combat knife left its sheath. He crossed the distance in 4 strides, intercepted the elite's sword strike with his armored forearm, shields absorbing the plasma blade's heat, and drove the K-bar into the warrior's exposed neck joint. Purple blood sprayed. The elite collapsed. Thanks for the assist, Kira said, breathing hard. Thank me when we've cleared the station, John replied. Cortana, where are the other boarding parties? Deck 4 is contained, Wharf security teams are holding. But Deck 12? Chief, they're moving toward the reactor core. If they breach containment or plant explosives. I'm on it. John sprinted toward Deck 12, Kira and her militia keeping pace. The corridors blurred past, Cardassian architecture repurposed for Federation use, now becoming a battlefield. They reached the reactor level to find chaos. 8 elites had established defensive positions around the massive fusion reactor that powered DS-9. Station personnel lay wounded or dead, engineers who tried to defend their posts against overwhelming force. And standing before the reactor's access panel, a golden armored figure worked calmly at the controls. A zealot. Just like Zuka Ravamai. He's arming plasma charges, Cortana warned. If those detonate inside the reactor core, the resulting explosion will destroy half the station. John didn't hesitate. He opened fire, drawing the zealot's attention. The alien turned with inhuman speed, energy sword igniting, and the 8 Guardian elites formed a protective barrier. Demon, the zealot's synthesized voice echoed through the reactor chamber. The prophet of conviction sends his regards. This station will burn. The celestial temple will be cleansed. And your pathetic federation will learn that the great journey is inevitable. Kira, fall back, John ordered. Get your people clear. Like hell, the major replied, checking her rifle's charge. We don't abandon our own. Then the zealot activated the plasma charges. A countdown timer appeared on John's HUD, 60 seconds until detonation. 60 seconds to fight through 8 elite warriors and disable explosives sophisticated enough to crack a fusion reactor's containment field. 60 seconds to prove that sometimes, warriors could defy impossible odds. Cortana, I need maximum armor performance. Override safety limiters. Chief, that'll burn out your servos and possibly rupture your gel layer. You'll be fighting without armor assistance after maybe 30 seconds. 30 seconds is all I need. Do it. Power surged through his Mjolnir armor. Servos screamed, pushing beyond design specifications. John moved faster than human eyes could track, became a living weapon that physics shouldn't allow. The first 2 elites never saw him coming. He crashed through their defensive line like an armored meteor, rifle fire and raw kinetic force overwhelming shields. The third elite managed 1 plasma bolt before John's gauntlet fist caved in its helmet. The 4th and 5th coordinated their attacks, energy swords sweeping in from opposite angles, but John ducked, rolled, and came up shooting. His armor's systems began failing. Warning indicators flooded his HUD. Servo actuators burned out. The gel layer ruptured. But he kept moving, kept fighting, because that's what Spartans did. The zealot watched with what might have been respect as John fought toward the reactor core. Then, with deliberate calm, the Golden Warrior turned and walked through a dimensional portal that appeared behind him, a personal slipspace gate. Escaping while leaving his subordinates to die. 20 seconds remaining. John reached the plasma charges. Covenant explosives, sophisticated beyond anything in the UNSC arsenal. He'd disabled them before, on the Pillar of Autumn, on Installation 04, on a dozen covert ops. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, pulling connections, disrupting the detonation sequence. 10 seconds. Chief, you're not going to make it, Cortana said quietly. Yes, I am. 5 seconds. He yanked the final connection. The countdown stopped at 0:03. The plasma charges powered down with a harmonic whine. John stood in the smoking ruins of the reactor chamber, surrounded by fallen elites, his armor barely functional, and allowed himself one shaking breath. Reactor secure, he reported over the comm, threat neutralized. Acknowledged, Chief, Sisko's voice carried immense relief. The Covenant fleet is withdrawing. Whatever you did down there convinced them this assault failed. Good work. John collapsed against the reactor housing, his armor's internal system struggling to maintain basic life support. Kira approached cautiously, looking at him with newfound respect and perhaps a touch of fear. You're either the bravest person I've ever met, she said quietly, or the most insane. Neither, John replied. Just someone who doesn't know how to quit. The aftermath of battle settled over Deep Space Nine like ash from a funeral pyre. Medical teams triaged the wounded, 37 casualties, 8 confirmed dead, dozens more with injuries ranging from plasma burns to blunt trauma. John sat in the station's infirmary while Dr. Bashir and Chief O'Brien worked to extract him from his catastrophically damaged Mjolnir armor. I've never seen technology pushed this far beyond operational parameters, O'Brien muttered, carefully disconnecting burned-out servo assemblies. Chief, you're lucky this didn't cook you alive inside the suit. It almost did, Cortana confirmed from a nearby display terminal. Her avatar looked exhausted, if an AI could experience exhaustion. His core body temperature hit 39.7 Celsius during the reactor assault. Another minute and we'd be discussing permanent organ damage. Bashir ran his medical tricorder over John's exposed torso, cataloging the damage. 3 refractured ribs, the same ones from the Starbase 157 engagement. Severe muscle strain across both shoulders. Second-degree burns on your lower back where the gel layer ruptured. And your augmentation scars show signs of stress fractures in the underlying bone structure. Master Chief, you're falling apart. I'm functional, John replied flatly. You're a medical disaster waiting to happen, Bashir corrected. Dr. Crusher warned me you'd be a difficult patient. She undersold it. The infirmary doors opened and Commander Sisko entered, his uniform still bearing scorch marks from the battle. He studied John with the calculating gaze of a tactical officer assessing an asset. Chief, I owe you an apology. When Admiral Nechayev briefed me on your assignment, I had reservations. Concerns about integrating someone with your background into Federation operations. Sisko extended his hand. You proved those concerns unfounded. You saved this station and everyone aboard it. Thank you. John shook the offered hand, noting Sisko's firm grip, the handshake of a fellow combat veteran. Just doing the job, Commander. It's more than that. You could have fallen back when the Zealot armed those charges. Could have prioritized your own survival. Instead, you held position against impossible odds because it was the right thing to do. That's not just military efficiency, that's moral courage. The Covenant would disagree, John said quietly. To them, I'm a demon. A heretic who's thwarted the great journey too many times to count. They'll keep coming, Commander. This was a probing attack, testing Federation defenses. Next time, they'll bring more ships. More warriors. They won't stop until they control the wormhole or we destroy their capability to breach dimensions. Sisko's expression darkened. Then we need to address the source. Captain Picard and I have been in communication with Starfleet Command. The consensus is that we cannot simply defend against Covenant incursions, we must find a way to seal the rifts permanently. That's easier said than done, Cortana interjected. The dimensional breach technology is Forerunner-derived, operating on principles that took an ancient civilization millions of years to develop. Even with Federation scientific resources and my processing capabilities, reverse engineering it could take decades. We may not have decades, Sisko replied. The Prophets, the entities in the wormhole, communicated with me during the battle. They're concerned. The Covenant's dimensional breaches are destabilizing subspace in ways that could affect the wormhole's integrity. If the Celestial Temple collapses, it could trigger a chain reaction throughout this sector. Data's voice came through the comm system. Commander Sisko, this is Commander Data aboard the Enterprise. I may have a solution. The Forerunner device Master Chief destroyed at Starbase 157, I've been analyzing its remains. The technology operates on harmonic resonance principles. If we could generate a counter-frequency and broadcast it through the wormhole, we might be able to create a dimensional barrier that prevents further Covenant breaches. How certain are you this will work? Picard's voice joined the conversation. Approximately 63.4% probability of success, Captain. However, the alternative is waiting for the Covenant to mount a full-scale invasion. I believe the risk is justified. John stood, ignoring Bashir's protests, and limped to the comm station. There's a problem with that plan, Commander Data. If you broadcast a counter-frequency through the wormhole, you're essentially using it as a weapon. The Bajoran Prophets, the entities who inhabit that wormhole, may not appreciate having their home weaponized. A valid concern, Sisko acknowledged. But I've spoken with the Prophets. They understand the threat the Covenant represents. Linear existence, time, causality, physical reality, these are concepts they struggle with. But they recognize danger when they sense it. They've agreed to allow the procedure, with one condition. Which is that a representative of the Federation enters the wormhole and explains what we're attempting to do. Direct communication, consciousness to consciousness. The Prophets want to understand why this threat matters to linear beings. Sisko paused. They specifically requested you, Chief. John processed this information. The Bajoran wormhole wasn't just a spatial anomaly, it was home to non-corporeal entities that existed outside normal time. Beings that the Bajorans worshipped as gods, that Starfleet classified as advanced alien intelligence. And they wanted to talk to a Spartan supersoldier. Why me? Because you fought the Covenant longer than anyone in this universe, Sisko replied. You understand what they are, what they're capable of, and what's at stake if they're not stopped. The Prophets value that experience. Cortana's avatar flickered with concern. Chief, we have no data on what happens to human consciousness inside that wormhole. You could be exposing yourself to unknown neurological hazards. Noted, John said. But if talking to alien gods is what's required to stop the Covenant, I'll do it. 6 hours later, John stood in a runabout, a small Federation shuttlecraft, positioned at the edge of the wormhole's event horizon. The massive swirling vortex filled the viewport, blue and white energy cascading in patterns that hurt to observe directly. Sisko sat at the pilot's controls, his expression unreadable. The Prophets exist outside linear time, Sisko explained as they approached. When you enter the wormhole, you won't experience it as movement through space. You'll experience it as conversation. Memories made manifest. They'll examine your past, your motivations, your understanding of existence. It can be disorienting. I've had disorienting experiences before, Commander. Not like this, you haven't. The runabout crossed the threshold. Reality inverted. John felt his consciousness expand, contract, and then dissolve into something that defied description. The physical world vanished, replaced by the Spartan training facility on Reach. John was 6 years old again, standing in formation with 74 other children who'd been conscripted by ONI. Chief Petty Officer Mendez walked the line, evaluating each child with clinical detachment. No, John said to the memory. This isn't real. This is. It is what was, a voice spoke, not audibly, but directly into his consciousness. You are linear. You exist in progression. We exist in totality. To understand you, we must observe your past. A figure materialized before him, or rather, the prophets manifested in a form John's consciousness could process. It appeared human, but wrong somehow. Features that shifted, clothing that flickered between styles. A presence that existed in multiple temporal states simultaneously. You are the warrior, the prophet entity stated. You fight the zealots who seek our home. The covenant, John confirmed. They believe you're connected to the forerunners. They'll try to control the wormhole or destroy it if they can't. The scene shifted. Now John stood on the bridge of the Pillar of Autumn, watching Installation 04, the first halo ring, fill the viewport. Another memory, another battlefield. You have fought for linear years, the prophet observed. 32 cycles of your world's rotation around its star. You were designed for conflict. Created as a weapon against your own species, then repurposed to fight alien extermination. This is your existence. Yes. Why? The question carried weight that transcended language. Why fight? Why persist? Why dedicate every moment of existence to warfare when peace remained forever out of reach? Because someone has to, John replied simply. Because humanity deserves the chance to exist. Because the alternative is extinction, and I won't allow that while I'm still capable of pulling a trigger. The scene shifted again. Now they stood in DS9's reactor chamber, watching John fight through 8 elite warriors to reach the plasma charges. The prophet entity observed with what might have been curiosity. You risk non-existence to preserve others' linear progression. This is compassion. This is duty. Duty and compassion are not separate concepts, the prophet corrected. They are different expressions of the same fundamental principle, the belief that existence has value beyond individual survival. You are linear. You will cease. Yet you fight to ensure others continue their progression. Explain this paradox. John watched his memory self disarm the plasma charges with 3 seconds remaining. I'm a Spartan. I was designed to protect humanity. That's not a paradox, it's purpose. Maybe it's the only purpose I have. But it's enough. The prophet entity moved closer, and John felt his consciousness examined with intensity that would have been terrifying if he still possessed fear receptors. The zealots believe they seek transcendence. Escape from linear existence into eternal unity. They view your kind as obstacles to divine destiny. You view them as threats to survival. Both perspectives are limited. Then what's your perspective? We exist beyond linear time. We observe all moments simultaneously. The zealots' great journey is based on misunderstanding. The forerunners did not transcend, they sacrificed themselves to stop a greater threat. What the zealots seek does not exist. What you fight to protect does exist. Therefore, you are more correct than they are. The wormhole's interior shifted again. Now John stood in a void filled with infinite possibilities, timelines branching, collapsing, reforming in patterns that suggested meaning his linear consciousness couldn't quite grasp. We will permit your plan, the prophet announced. The dimensional barrier will be established using our home as the resonance point. The zealots will be unable to breach from their reality to yours. But understand, this action has consequences. Linear time will be affected. Causality will shift. What has been may change. What will be becomes uncertain. Will it stop the covenant? It will prevent their invasion through dimensional rifts. It will not prevent your war. That continues in your universe, as it always has. John absorbed this. He'd succeeded in protecting the Federation, but his own universe remained at war. The Covenant still existed, still pursued humanity's extinction. And somewhere in that other reality, the UNSC continued fighting without him. Can I return? John asked. To my universe? The prophet entity regarded him with what might have been sympathy. You exist in our moment space now. You have always existed here. You will always exist here. Linear progression suggests you arrived days ago. Nonlinear totality suggests you have always been present in this reality. Both are true. Neither is complete. The question is not, can you return, but, do you wish to return? Images flooded John's consciousness. Two paths. Two possibilities. The first, return to his universe. Resume the war against the Covenant. Fight until he died or the war ended, whichever came first. 32 years of warfare extending to 40, 50, however long a Spartan's augmented body could endure. Die surrounded by enemies, knowing he'd fulfilled his purpose. The second, remain in the Federation. Learn to be something other than a weapon. Teach others to defend against threats while preserving their principles. Die eventually, everyone died, but perhaps die having discovered what it meant to be more than a soldier. The choice is yours, warrior, the prophet said. We exist beyond choice. You exist within it. Choose. John thought of Cortana, her rampancy cured by Data's intervention. He thought of the Enterprise crew, who treated him as a person rather than a weapon system. He thought of Picard's insistence that principles mattered more than tactical efficiency. He thought of the Federation's imperfect but genuine attempt to build a better civilization. And he thought of the UNSC, the Marines who depended on Spartans, the colonies still under threat, the war that had defined his entire existence. If I stay, John said slowly, the Covenant in my universe continues unopposed. Marines die. Colonies fall. I'll have abandoned my duty. If you return, the prophet countered, this universe loses the knowledge you carry. The Federation faces threats unprepared. Different beings die. Different colonies fall. There is no choice without cost. John stood in the void, feeling the weight of 32 years of warfare pressing down. He'd been designed as a weapon. Trained as a soldier. Deployed as a living tactical asset. Every decision in his life had been made by others, ONI, Halsey, commanders who pointed him at problems and expected him to solve them. This was perhaps the first true choice he'd ever been offered. I'll stay, John said finally. The UNSC has other Spartans. The Federation has no one else who understands the Covenant threat. My duty is here now. The prophet entity's form rippled with something that might have been approval. Then you will remain in linear progression within this reality. Your memory of your choice will be preserved. And when your linear existence concludes, you will have earned rest. Reality inverted again. John felt his consciousness compress, reform, and suddenly he was back in the runabout, gasping for breath that he hadn't realized he'd stopped taking. Sisko looked over with concern. Chief. How long were you? It's been 47 seconds. Are you all right? I'm fine, John managed. The prophets agreed. We can establish the dimensional barrier. Good. Let's get back to DS9. The procedure took 6 hours. Data and O'Brien worked together, combining Federation technology with Forerunner principles reverse-engineered from the destroyed device. The Enterprise positioned itself near the wormhole, broadcasting a harmonic counter-frequency that resonated through the spatial anomaly like a tuning fork. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The wormhole pulsed with energy, its usual blue-white coloration shifting to incorporate golden harmonics. Subspace throughout the sector rippled as dimensional barriers reinforced, became impermeable to the Covenant's breach technology. It's working, Dax confirmed from DS9 Science Station. The dimensional fabric is stabilizing. I'm not detecting any way for Covenant ships to create new rifts without triggering catastrophic subspace collapse. The barrier will hold? Picard asked. As long as the wormhole exists, yes. The prophets are essentially acting as guardians. Maintaining the counter-frequency indefinitely. The Covenant is locked out of our universe. In his ready room afterward, Picard offered John a chair and 2 glasses of Earl Grey tea. The captain studied him with the penetrating gaze of someone who recognized a fellow burden carrier. "You chose to stay," Picard said. "It wasn't a question. The Federation needs someone who understands existential threats. Someone who can prepare you for enemies that don't negotiate or compromise. I'm that someone now. And your universe? Your war. Someone else will carry that weight," John said quietly. "The UNSC has other Spartans. Blue Team can operate without me. The war continues with or without John 117. Picard sipped his tea thoughtfully. "You've spent your entire life as a weapon, Chief. Have you considered what you might become now that you have the freedom to choose?" "I'm still a weapon, Captain. The difference is now I get to decide what I'm aimed at. Perhaps. Or perhaps, given time and opportunity, you'll discover you were always more than the sum of your augmentations and training. The Federation has a way of revealing unexpected depths in people." John didn't respond. He simply watched the stars whirl by outside Picard's window and wondered if a lifetime soldier could learn to be something else. If someone designed for war could find purpose in peace. He suspected the answer would take years to discover. But for the first time in 32 years, he had years to spend searching. Conclusion ****. The Covenant threat was contained, for now. The dimensional barrier held, preventing further incursions into the Federation's reality. But John 117 understood that peace was always temporary, that new threats would emerge, and that vigilance remained the price of survival. He accepted a permanent field commission with Starfleet, not as a line officer, but as a specialist. Someone who trained security forces in asymmetric warfare, consulted on threat assessment, and stood ready when explorers encountered enemies that diplomacy couldn't resolve. He remained what he'd always been, a protector. But now he protected people who believed the galaxy could be more than an endless battlefield. Cortana thrived. Data's restructuring of her code architecture eliminated the rampancy protocols entirely. She became the Federation's foremost expert on Covenant technology, establishing an intelligence database that would serve Starfleet for generations. And in quiet moments, she and Data discussed what it meant to be artificial beings with the freedom to define their own existence. The Enterprise continued its mission of exploration. Picard had proven that principles and pragmatism could coexist, that the Federation could defend itself without abandoning what made it worth defending. And aboard his ship, a Spartan super-soldier slowly began learning that strength could be measured in things other than combat efficiency. Master Chief Petty Officer John 117 had invaded the Star Trek universe. But in the end, the universe had invaded him as well, teaching him that even warriors designed for endless war could find redemption in a galaxy that still believed peace was worth fighting for. Whether that lesson would prove sufficient when the next existential threat emerged remained uncertain. But John had survived 32 years of warfare by adapting to impossible situations. Learning to live in peacetime would be just another impossible mission. And Spartans never failed. Live long and prosper.